And we're live. Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. Let me just bring my microphone down a wee bit. Oh, I think it was pretty much all right there. And turn it a wee angle. There we go. How are we all tonight? Thanks very much for joining us. Hope you're keeping well. It's another stormy night here. It's absolutely lashing down outside. So, and it's batten down the hatches in Northern Ireland at the minute, but that's kind of our normal weather. So thanks very much for joining us, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. If somebody would give me a wee, yeah, everything's fine. I know I've got a wee visual indicator here, but it's always nice to know that you can hear me all right. And this is one of two episodes on the God Emperor of Dune. Hello, Babs. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you keeping? We're having a wee bit of a natter there in the chat room in the episode about Frankenstein and his monster. Fine there, good to know. So this one episode of Leto II is the most popular episode that we'd had before we remastered these and put subtitles on them. Hi, Aqua Baby. So it's interesting that I think a lot of people didn't catch the other Leto episode, but we had over 30,000 views on the Leto II, this Leto II episode, the first time around. But this is very much looking at Leto II. As I said, this is a kind of thematic analysis and something that's quite frowned upon, I think, generally in academia, because it's seen as a weak point of approach, which I disagree with entirely, as you've probably figured out. So I kind of bucked a bit of a trend there. So we do look at Leto II again, and it's from a different aspect, I suppose. But in this case, it was about evolution, and we look at him as part of the hero in the next chapter as well. So it's just a lot of people seem to pick it very strongly a favourite episode, I think, and very much a favourite character of a lot of the Dune series fans, those who've made it past the first trilogy. I think I think you probably agree with me, guys. A lot of you sort of saying that the God Emperor is your favourite character. And we were just talking about that he works on many different levels within the Dune series. He's an educator, but he's a monster, and he's also no longer human at all at a certain point, and pretty much described as the ultimate predator. But there's something, as Bab says about him, he's quite admirable. There's something, noble in his loneliness and the fact that he gives up his humanity and so on. So that's my dog just letting herself out there. So yeah, he's a very popular character. As I said, we looked at him from the point of evolution in this chapter. So if you have any questions regarding him, fire away as usual. Anything to do with Dune, the God Emperor himself. And I actually would have to say that I really enjoyed researching and reading actually this episode for the audio. I really enjoyed it. I tried to put as much as I'm not an actor of any kind at all, but I tried to try and give his voice a bit of a sense of authority and stuff. And I quite like characters like that. I thought my Northern Irish accent quite suited him quite well. So, we were talking about his loneliness, the fact that he's no longer human, that he can take on this thing to do that with the Golden Path and actually run with it, that he's got the chops to do it. Really, it's the flaw for Paul Atreides is that he cannot give up his humanity. Hello again, Carol. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And I suppose what makes Leto II different than his father is that he can give up that humanity. Through Reneo, we come to know the humanity he sacrificed. Yeah, that's the thing. It is a sacrifice. So no matter how much, this is what we were saying, Babs. Paul Atreides, Leto II. We have to question our motives when we look at these characters and ask why do we admire them. And of course, we know at this point within the discussion, we're all pretty certain, I'm sure you're all aware, that Frank Herbert has created these characters to be admirable, if you like, to speak to that sense of that thing that we like in heroes and those kind of stories, And he's a very, very different kind of protagonist. We don't get to see protagonists like Leto II in literature very often at all. And the closest kind of thing you kind of find in literature to godlike beings is kind of, I suppose, your ancient myths and stuff. And He's a very, very interesting character. I love him to bits. And I actually think he's probably, as a character, I think he's a very, very impressive literary creation. And you get that sense within Dune, that we talk about the epic sense of Dune, and we use this word epic a lot. Again, I probably work with a different meaning of it. And it gives you that sense that it's at the end of his reign. It's a bit like the Iliad, the sense of those epics, which is kind of just a bit of the end of the Trojan War, if you see what I mean. And I find him a fascinating character. Some of the stuff that I don't know if you looked at some of the material that's in the film, in the video, but I'll tell you a few wee things that was interesting about making it. Was that, first of all, the God Emperors, apart from James McAvoy's role on the Children of Dune TV series, apart from that, he's never been filmed as the Worm, if you see what I mean. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about making this episode was going through finding the different artists who'd kind of focused and who'd drawn the God Emperor. And I tried to put as many of these good artists in these episodes as possible. I think we have, is it Joe Peterson has a picture of the God Emperor with I think, is it a Duncan Idaho Gola and a Moneo standing next to him. So I think it was really good that we'd had that kind of, I don't know, check out that art in the episode. It's really good, and it helped enormously, I think. One of the things in trying to convey this work, it is pretty detailed and it's quite heavy. The images that go with the video, I think help it. As they say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So there we go. God Emperor of Dune. Again, evolution is the ongoing theme within this. This is a chapter really, and what we've done is just broke it up into individual episodes. So we're running with that. We'll look at Miles Tegg, I think, and the final Duncan Idaho Gola in this chapter. Excuse me 1 wee second, please. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. I'm just getting a nice cup of coffee. Thanks, thank you. There we go. All quiet on the Western Front. Sorry about that, folks. So let me see. Yeah, I could just hear my son nattering there in the hall. So has anyone got any wee questions about the God Emperor or God Emperor of Dune or any of the Dune series? Coffee at this hour? Yeah. I have a unfortunately, Carol and I have an incredibly annoying kind of sleep disorder. So as much as it's 10:34 in the evening here, I've only been awake for about 8 hours at this point. And I'm about to attempt what I call a swap around. But I kind of have a thing. It's where I don't have a sleep pattern at all. And I can get locked into funny little so and so. So yeah, a cup of Joe at this hour, Karen, absolutely. The coffee ritual is very important, I think. Coffee did not fail to. Good say. Coffee is we were talking about this the other day, Karen. Books with science fiction books in particular with coffee in them, and Dune is a coffee-heavy book. I think there's a lot of interesting things to do with the coffee rituals and so on. Aqua Baby says, didn't have an opinion of Leto II, but in the current American political climate, I've come to look at the God Emperor more critically now. Part of Leto II, and Bab says, part of Leto II's golden path was to evolve humanity to be invisible. Well, you've got a question mark there, to be invisible to prescience. Yeah, pretty much. I think so. And I think particularly with the Ixian technology within God Emperor of Dune, and how he develops that, the idea of no globes and no ships. I mean, he is obviously aware of everything that's coming. I think, the current American political climate, Aqua Baby, come to look at how the God Emperor more critically now. The whole series of books is a lesson on political leadership and I suppose the political world, on government, really, I suppose. But yeah, I actually thought that the arrival of Dune was kind of timely, and we'd seen Trump and everything like that. And but I'll be completely honest with you. The whole point of Frank Herbert's warnings. This is not some people will be aware of this stuff, I suppose, throughout history, but they're not new lessons. I'll put it that way. What Frank's trying to warn you about is a repetitive thing within history, and we can identify lots of leaders from different spheres who can arguably fit into the pattern that's being presented. What Frank calls the Camelot pattern. Excuse me. In the Dune series. But it's absolutely relevant, and particularly to politics, and especially if you look at things like Afghanistan at the moment, and we tend to look at what's happening there now as the result of this, that, or the other over the most recent years. But there's actually, a cascade of events and behaviour. What's going on there now is a result of what's been happening there for over the hundreds of years, maybe at least over 100 years. It drags back to empire and stuff. So I think Dune's a very much relevant political book, and I suppose I'm going to use this word in particularly in America, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but we've talked a wee bit about this word that America's gone. There's a woke culture in America, and I've discussed it. I'm not too sure exactly what that means, but I'm generally getting the sense that people are becoming a woke to injustice, that kind of thing. That's part of your social structure. I might be wrong. I'm trying to figure out wokeness myself. I read definitions of it in here and then. And I sort of ask people about it, but I sort of don't get that level of and we understand in Dune the sleeper must awaken, but I don't get that level of why have you been asleep for so long? Why could you not see this? So particularly these lessons in politics, we were talking about. Excuse me. The ancient Greeks are well aware of what religion is and how to use it to manipulate. Ancient government's not that stupid, and modern governments kind of operate based on what they figured out. So I think it's very relevant. Sorry, I'm rambling a wee bit here, but it's very relevant in terms of the political climate. I'll just catch up with your point. There, people come to like characters even though authors intend to be a clear admonishment. Yeah. So I'll just run back a wee bit there, folks, because I jumped over a couple of Babs's comments there just to run with that thread. Part of Leto's golden path was to evolve humanity to be invisible to presence. Leto was a tyrant. He was meant to be looked at critically. Tyrant's an interesting word, folks, by the way. And it doesn't mean what most people think it means, again. Isn't it often we get Oedipus Rex, but in actuality, it's Oedipus Tyrannus. A tyrant is technically another word for it's a synonym for usurper. So Rex, in terms of king, for example, they don't mean the same thing. But originally, I think my understanding is that's the original meaning of what a tyrant is. It's in English, the synonym would be an usurper. So is a person who becomes king by sorting out the previous guy and by hook or by crook, if you like, rather than naturally inheriting the position. People come to like characters even though the authors intend to be a clear admonishment. And I think likability is what sets the anti-heroes from the villains. Excuse me. Yes, I mean, guys, we were talking about this Aqua Baby Babs. The absolute likability of the God Emperor. He's so unusual. He's so charismatic. You have a curiosity about this character and again, I think you've not been presented with anything like this in literature, outside of sort of mythology. But the odd intelligent is the equivalent of kind of Smaug in a kind of way, that kind of clever dragon. Whenever we do talk about him in terms of the hero, it's a bit like that, the hero quest, the inversions of these kind of things with Leto II. And sometimes when I refer to Paul, for example, throughout this series, depending on what I'm wanting to talk about, Paul can be a hero. I'll talk about him as being a protagonist. I can talk about him as being an anti-hero. I'll talk about him as being the antagonist and the villain. But the word hero is really, in terms of what it means to the reader. Whenever we do look at the hero, that Dune attacks the hero kind of on three different levels. Um, and yeah, arguably Paul is a villain, and arguably Leto II is the ultimate villain. And as we said, we get the reiteration of these lessons within Dune. So Paul is the warning, and we're set up to like Paul. And I think people talk about Frank Herbert's writing. I think it's a want to use an entire novel to set up your reader. And really, as I said, we talk about Paul Atreides being a hero of heroes. Um, and I even sort of used the metaphor a wee bit that I thought that Dune was the book itself was kind of a hero to science fiction. You'll see that later on near the end. There's so many different ways that we can look at these characters, but Paul's the warning. Leto II is that warning amplified massively. And yeah, he should be charismatic, and young Leto's charismatic. And that's the thing. We do get the transition. Not that we see the 3,500 years between, but we get to understand the youth of Leto II, and we understand that sacrifice, the heroic sacrifice. In terms of all of those kind of ritualistic patterns of looking at myths and stuff, I suppose he's both the hero and the villain. And not only that, I think we point out later on that he's also the prize. The pearl of great wisdom, all of that. He's all of these things at once. And he's hero, he's prophet, he's God, he's devil. And again, because the Shai Hulud, the idea that the worm is, I suppose, again, if we think about the Fremen being kind of a combination of Zen Buddhism and Sunni Islam, but there's also within a dualistic nature of their religion, the worm is a chthonic deity, if you like. It's a god of the earth, and it represents both God and devil. And whenever we see the worm take over with Leto II, we have that, I think, within the character. It's a fascinating character. I could just chat about him all day. Let's have a look at what we're saying, folks. I'll catch up a wee minute here. But yeah, as you said, like, maybe we can, and it's the same with films. Sometimes you might notice that you'll get feedback from an audience on a film that they really liked a particular character, and often, I mean, the Han Solo. Maybe if you want to think about that a lot of people sort of, particularly from my generation, going to Star Wars, or you think about the kids running around playing. A lot more kids I remember wanted to be Han Solo than Luke Skywalker, and he is the secondary character. He's the kind of, and he is that character that goes through that redemption arc, if you like. I think he's the same character in the samurai version of what the film that Star Wars is based on is called Hidden Fortress, and I think the Han Solo character in it is called Rock Yurito. I think I might be wrong. It's been a long time since I've seen that. I lost all my Akira Kurosawa films. So yeah, it's a common thing for either readers of a book or viewers of a film to fall in love with the secondary hero more than the protagonist, I think. Sometimes that's to do with the very general nature of the monomythic nature of the hero. I suppose Luke Skywalker can be seen as a bit more bland than he's not a bland character, don't get me wrong, but he's got less shades than Han Solo's character. It's that kind of thing. Just to catch up, folks, let's see. People come. I think likability is what sets anti-heroes from villains. I'm going to say something, guys. We were having a wee chat about The Demolished Man recently, which is the Alfred Bester book. And it really will mess entirely in your head with the concept of who's your hero and what is a hero, because the hero is a villain. It's a murder. He's a murderer, and you're going to watch him commit and go with him on that journey. And I wouldn't describe the character's called Ben Reich. I think we were chatting about this the other day. I would not describe Ben Reich as a hero or a protagonist. Well, no, sorry, I would describe him as a protagonist, but I can't describe him as a hero or an anti-hero. He is absolutely the villain, I think, and he's a similar warning, by the way, that character, I think, very much so, to what some of the warnings you're getting in Dune, but he represents more the corporate individual. Let's see. Siona's Adam Fangshot. Hello, Adam. Says Siona's vision of Kralizec seems to suggest that it would involve weaponized prescience to some extent, which I suppose is the reason for Leto breeding the no gene into humanity. Yeah, well, I'd argue almost all of that sort of what you're saying there is almost everything that's geared towards Kralizec is to do with weaponizing humans, I suppose, in that sense, Adam. It's a good point. Thank you. Excuse me. Bob says, "At Adam, so it would appear." Yeah, which is crazy that Duncan Golas don't have the Siona gene. And again, it's maybe because they need combinations of genes and different paths to create different effects. If you think about, I don't see Darth Vader as a hero. No, neither do I. Um, in fact, Aquababy says Leto II is a villain. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, again, you're not having to be crushed by Leto II, are you? And he really does crush the bulk of humanity. We're all looking in Dune. We're voyeurs from the future, getting historical documents, and then snippets of it's always the same thing. We have a degree of prescience ourselves, so it's a question of being. Yeah, I suppose it's a lot of Dune is to do with making value judgments, and because that term is used quite a lot, I think it's the idea is meant to settle into your brain that you really do have to question what you think about and why you apply these things and what would you do in this situation. Because again, these characters are parallels to people in real life. Bob says, "Bad guy till the end. His assumed rejection of the DS and his death was so redeeming." Don't is it that that's Darth Vader? Yeah, I'll actually go on with the Anakin Skywalker thing. That I don't know. The Star Wars, the first Star Wars trilogy, the prequels, is almost, yeah, you're right. It's like the genesis of a villain, and excuse me, but the actions of the Jedi and things like that. So there's a lot of that just that they came across as massive. Where they don't take his mum with them. That's immoral. Um, and I that was my big problem with it. I thought everybody thinks the Jedi are the guy. They're just a bunch of they don't. They really don't care. I thought that was the thing that I got from the prequels, the first one, and then of course it doesn't go well for his mother, and she ends up dead, and then his rage explodes. It's so they're kind of trying to justify. I think they're setting up the genesis of Darth Vader because they're trying to justify his evilness, and he's meant to have a redemption at the very end. But again, it's all well and good. But Stevie Campbell says hello, good evening, Doc. Hi, Stevie. How are you? But it's that kind of idea of redemption. It's a bit of a cop out. I've killed billions of people and blown up all these, But just at the point where I'm pretty old and decrepit and about to die, I've turned a new leaf, and that's enough for redemption. I think it's pretty weak to me morally. I have to say. But yeah, I think Darth Vader's a villain. You get that sense as well. King Arthur, I suppose. The Uther Pendragon is not generally seen as a particularly good character, I suppose. Keith Kolb says, "Hi everyone." Hi Keith, how are you? And how's it going, Stevie? Chris Gibson says, "Afghanistan. I'd recommend the talks given by the anthropologist Thomas Barfield. With Western intervention, it's as complex out there as the Dune universe." Yeah. Oh, we can go back into that region, way back into the ancient world, Chris. It's just a, but yeah, it's a. I know enough about it. I think just to say it's just amazing country, I suppose. But Keith says, "I'm good giving attention to this instead of work." Fair enough, Keith. This is all work for me sometimes. Not really, to be honest. It's not at all. This is actually fun for me, I think. But yeah, I suppose interestingly, a lot of people were looking at sort of positive parallels with some desert cultures just prior to what happened in Afghanistan and within the, and Afghanistan's a complete mess at the minute, isn't it? Unbelievable mess. I feel extreme. I have to say, my heart goes out to the women of Afghanistan. Absolutely. And I won't tell your boss, Keith, no worries. But yeah, I mean, there are options. but they're horrific, unfortunately. And there's always a simple solution to a problem. I'm one of these people. I'm a problem solver, and I can solve pretty much any problem with a quick. Well, it's one way of doing it, but it's usually not something that I would do. I wouldn't have the moral gumption. There all are solutions to problems, but again, it depends on how you value human life, and I happen to value all kinds of life. So there you go. Do you think Arafel is synonymous with Kralizec? Excuse me. Let me just check that, sir, in context. Because I'm not too sure what you mean. Cloud darkness of okay. So I was just checking that there. The cloud, was it the cloud judgment of holy purpose? Do you think is what I was just quickly checking that to see what it means there, Adam? Is synonymous with Kralizec. Yeah, and again, I have my own opinions on this. Do you not fear the Ixians? They can make the machines, but they can no longer make Arafel. I know, I was there. Is the cloud darkness of holy judgment? Okay. The cloud darkness of holy judgment. That's a very interesting way of explaining it. Reverend Mother Dario Drad discovers the word Arafel inscribed in stones on the ruins of Sich Tavar. The cloud. I'm trying to get a sense of the cloud. The Ixians no longer have that. I think it's the ability. Let me just bring that up again. I want to make sense of it. Hebrew word for off. Okay. Hebrew word for fog, apparently. Got it, yes. Let me just backtrack to that question then. Do I think it's not? Yeah, the fog at the end of, yeah. In that sense, I think, yes, he's talking, and it's to do with their ability to see it, I think, isn't it? Just from the context of that sentence. So, and if it's inscribed in stones on the ruins of Sich Tamar, again, maybe this is kind of like, again, the sense of prescience that we get. That we were talking about, there's so much that we don't see in Dune that we just, again, there's snippets and stuff, and we were questioning why certain things don't happen. I think the track that we were on yesterday was why does it take the Reverend Mother Gaius Helmohim 15 or 16 years to talk to Jessica about messing up the breeding program? We were talking about what's happening in between. Part of Kralizec it's Kralizec's kind of that sense it's a common end of the world type myth, and attached to the Golden Path. The only difference is that it's been applied to the end of the universe. This type of typhoon struggle. So yeah, it's obviously a nod to, in terms of what the Ixians are. I think the Ixians, the God Emperor knows that they're doomed. And I think he's just, if that's his last words, isn't that correct? That just saying, don't pay. Let me have a wee look at that again. This is from the Dune wiki. It says, as Leto II, the God Emperor, disintegrates, his last words to Sion Atreides and Duncan Idaho are, do not fear the Ixians. They can make the machines, but they can no longer make Arafel. I know, I was there. They can no longer make fog. They can no longer hide things, maybe. I don't know. Later, Leto II dies, and Sion explains that Arafel is the cloud darkness of holy judgment. Oh, yeah. I have a cloud. Friend day began with night, and following the idea of darkness around, she found the Fremen carving at the setting arcane sun. Oh, yeah. See, I mean, these are the books, guys, that I can't remember that well. I'm going to go through all the Dune series again, but these are the ones that I know the least well, I suppose, is the Bene Gesserit books. It says here, Odrad follows a series of clues until she finds a secret chamber containing an undiscovered spice hoard of Leto II, and more importantly, a message from the tyrant to the Bene Gesserit of her own day, asking how the sisterhood will meet its end. Arafel appears to be associated with the implication of Kralizec, the Typhoon struggle, battle at the end of the universe. But the Hebrew Mr. Fog, yeah, I think so. It's got something to do with prescience and so on. Excuse me, and I think he's kind of just saying that I think in that suggestion that the Ixians are going to be the Ixians machines will be involved, but they're not going to be there, something like that, and that we know that the Ixians are going to kind of being supported by the God Emperor in the time of his his golden path and crushing of humanity. They get left alone, and it's kind of they end up weak. And that's the sense where they're easily wiped out. I think no new machines next in a long time, that kind of thing. So yes, absolutely. And I often question these kind of events. This is, as I said, it's a typical end of the world myth that's been applied forward to the end of the universe, if you like. Let me see, just catching up. Sorry, folks. So, it feels like every book has some detail that ends up feeling like a red herring or something that's just interesting but doesn't ever pay off. I remember thinking of some elements that way, but I don't remember them right now. Laughing out loud says Karen. Well, it's the same there. I mean, we're talking about that and having a wee look at it, and it jogs memory. But I can't remember and even the details that I'm finding in Dune itself. And I've read that book so many times. You always miss something. And it's a bit like watching a film. If you watch a particular film over and over again, at some point, in the film you might just do that. You've blinked and you've missed something, and it's kind of enjoyable to always. Oh, I don't remember that from that bit. I can't remember. I've seen that film. I don't remember that. It happens to me quite a lot, and I've got pretty good memory. And it's the same with books, and your memory works differently in the short term and in the long term. And particularly, it just depends on when you've read the book or seen the film, I suppose. But it is good to come back and enjoy things again, I think, and that they do feel fresh, or that you missed some little detail and it has, like this RFL, there's meaning in it, and that we have to consider it and go, yeah, it's good fun. Jose, hello. What virtues do you think? What excuse me? What virtues do you think the modern society can learn from the Fremen, if any? Oh. Well, what? I don't. Well, that you. I don't. That we all become extinct. Is the lessons that the Fremen teach in Dune, I suppose. I understand what you're saying, Jose. It's quite a big kind of thing to say. I suppose that in terms of the virtues really focus. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to your question. I do apologize. Virtues do you think modern society can learn from the Fremen? Well, the idea of symbiosis with nature, obviously, I think is a big part of Herbert's message about ecology in the Dune series, and it's about the two different approaches, and particularly I think that the idea that the Fremen's approach to life is primitive or tribal or anything like that is wrong in Dune, and it's not presented that way in a kind of modern sense of how we look at some cultures, particularly desert cultures. Because the Fremen are incredibly sophisticated, have their technology, and their technology is generally considered better than all of these. We have guilds and stuff and things like in but the Fremen can make better, desert equipment than anyone else, and their equipment is geared to understanding the ecosystems that they're in. But I think so. The thing I was trying to say, sorry, Jose, is that a lot of people look at the Fremen and say they're not systemic in their thinking. They are. So is the Western man approach. The difference in the two is the symbiotic relationship. So how to live with your own environment and engage in the God Emperor talks about husbandry, and just how to live and how to be harmonious with nature, and I think Herbert was keen on about quite a lot about putting more energy back into the system than was in it, I think. Um, but we have so many people coming up with so many ideas about this, that, and the other. People talking about, oh, we'll wipe out mosquitoes because, oh, look at, and they've no idea of the consequences. So that I suppose the other thing that anybody can learn from these books and from the Fremen is that actions have consequences, and things can snowball out of. Me and my wife believe this very firmly. Things can always get worse, but they can always snowball out of control very, very quickly. So that I think there's a. I'm at the part in. Excuse me. I've just arrived at the part in Dune where um, I suppose Paul and Jessica have been taken in by Stilgar. I'm at the bit just before the fight with Jamis. Again, that's the part of the book where we start having to look at the language and the dictionary at the back and begin to immerse ourselves properly, and we get these lessons on the Fremen. But yeah, water conservation I think is a pretty good one. Jose, I don't know what you think. I believe at the current state at the minute is that 1 in 6 people in the world do not have clean potable water, and my understanding is that's about to get a lot worse. My understanding is it's going to be a big, big problem in the Middle East and looking globally. Like we keep wondering why everybody's half of Europe and America's coming in, Britain, everybody. What's everybody interested in Northern Ireland for? And I can tell you that in the coming world environment, we're in a very, very happy place in terms of heat and all of that stuff, and we're an agrarian society. Though I think the interesting thing about Ireland, I suppose, is within X amount of years, it'll be maybe a wee small archipelago or a little group of islands, I suppose, more than one big island. But if that answers your question, Jose, certainly water conservation and things like that, and how to live in symbiosis with your environment. Because there's lots of things about the Fremen that aren't virtuous, I suppose. Bab says that they kind of unavoidable when Frank passed before finishing it. Yeah, absolutely. But as I said, it's one of those things that allows us to all speculate in a nice way, because speculation is not always great, but really just have fun with it and look at the evidence that he provided for us. Karen's absolutely right, by the way. Red herrings, as it I'm not sure if it was you that said it, Karen, but there's enough red herrings in Dune. Let me just catch up. We're piling along here with wonder if let's see. Familial relations has something to do with this context. But the Baron, here we go. The Baron is bad, and readers know he's bad, but Leto is an abomination who represses the human population, and he's okay because he happens to be Paul's son. I'd argue that, I'd say that the Baron and Leto I are equally bad, and everything, everything that you hear in these histories and stuff is written by noble people and members of the, you don't get the common, the average Joe's opinion. But Leto I is an absolute manipulator he's a propagandist. I mean, he strikes me as very much a feudal lord. If you understand that, it's the same as royal families and stuff. What they do is they construct a narrative, a myth, back to X, a certain point in time where pretty much this is common of royal family, where God decided that they should represent them on the earth, and that they have a document that they wrote usually, and that's the birth of a royal family. That's how it happens. So royalty, the whole thing. Dune's not told from the little guy's point of view. It's told from the people who look down on everyone, I suppose. So that's it, and I think that's the dislocation for you as the readers, that we don't consider this too often when Paul talks about killing 60 billion people. That's it. You can't put an individual face to 60 billion people, can you? You have to assume that under the God Emperor, if he withdrew spice, everyone in the universe who's addicted to spice dies. So that's a cull of mankind right there. Excuse me. So I think the Baron's pretty bad, and That's the thing. The things that separate the Baron and Leto's actions is that one's a good looking, fine, noble chap, nobility. The others are grotesque. But if you actually, we have an episode where we look at the two together, and you'll find out that Leto the First and Leto and Baron Harkonnen are very, very similar. And as I said, I think that was the Baron's bad, readers know he's bad, but Leto is an abomination who represses. And that's Leto the Second you're talking about there, Aqua Baby. I'm pretty sure I understand that, but just to have a wee comparison to Leto the First there. Excuse me. And he's okay because he happened to be Paul's son. Yeah, again, we invest in, but he's something alien too. I think the Leto the Second we should not be going. Look at that big worm chap, isn't he? What a charismatic guy he is. The body is almost an inversion. It's meant to be a half man, half worm. He's a grotesquerie, but we still look at him. We all, again, anybody who's joined us there, we were just generally chatting earlier that almost everybody here thinks, a lot of people here think of the God Emperor as their favorite character in the original Dune series. Might be wrong with that. It tends to be pretty popular, He tends to be pretty popular. The Baron's Paul's grandfather, but you don't know for some time in the story as it's revealed. That's correct. It's Paul that reveals it, isn't it, in the tent, I think. I don't think it's that no one can make desert equipment as well as the Fremen, it's that no one else cares enough to do it well. Probably, yeah. Businesses want to save money, don't they? And, again, probably I think we talk. I think they talk about the still suits manufactured during the banquet scene, which we will come to. And I think that you're absolutely right, Keith, that the ones that are manufactured that aren't Fremen tend to be more expensive, but don't work as well. When one learns from any story, what one learns from any story, says Babs, depends on view going into it. Absolutely. As I said, you can read things many different ways. And yeah, depends what you pick up sometimes, I suppose. I hate reading a book if I'm being a bit daydreamy, to be honest. I can go past it. I can read a full page and not pay attention to one word sometimes. But I kind of bring myself out of that, and I'll run back and read it again. But it does annoy me that I can just, if I'm feeling that kind of way, a bit procrastinatory. If the entire industrial base of X was dedicated to making awesome desert survival gear the way they're dedicated to making Highlanders, probably get some awesome freaking desert gear. Yeah. Ixian technology, I think, again, one of those things that we don't learn enough about. But fundamentally, I mean, if you actually explore X up until the God Emperor of Dune, their tech is pretty much, is fundamental to the universe that's there. And each of these kind of techs, particularly, get a lot of impression. A lot of the Holtzman field stuff is made by X, shields and stuff like that. But then, as I said, it's that point of decline, the no ships, and then that safety that they feel, I suppose, in a time when everyone else is under pressure to survive the God Emperor. Caron says the Baron is made to appear as the obvious evil, but you're supposed to realize that Leto isn't necessarily better, the perfect opposite. That's right. The whole point is it's not, I think. Leto the First is painted as very cat, and if you even follow on through with Paul after Leto's death, this man's being enshrined, as part of the myth. So everything about Leto, if you think about it, we're looking at him from the far future. We do have an omniscient narrator, but everything about him is meant as appearance. And Leto the First he doesn't commit. We know all the mistakes that he makes. We talk about Leto the First as a great leader. No, he is not at all. I think he's incredible. That's the thing. I think Paul Atreides' father's really stupid. And I certainly know that if I'd been in his place, I wouldn't have done things. I don't know what you think. Maybe Leto the First is meant to be pretty admirable. I don't know what you think. I think his whole idea for his family is stupid, and I think his actions are dumb. It results in the death of his entire family, his entire house, almost his entire family's household, and even all the people that come with it. It's a slaughter fest. His mistake, um, and that Leto is meant to be also one of your lessons on the dangerous hero. He's a hero to the people of Caladan, and if we look at how slavishly Gurney and Duncan Idaho are attached to um, the House Atreides through on Caladan through their hatred of the Harkonnen. So he's also a pretty unreasonable guy. He's pursuing a vendetta. So revenge is a motivator to, and as much as it's a political thing, you think he would be above such things if he was responsible for so many people. Is the way most readers look at Leto II is a result of the Messiah impulse. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. He is a Messiah, isn't he? He's another one. And he's there to save you, to save mankind, though. It's not just to save you. It's all about mankind. And as I said, I often talk about the idea that the Golden Path does not exist at all, in my own mind, in certain ways, that it dies with the God Emperor. But each Golden Path the Golden Path for Paul is different than the Golden Path for Leto II. But at this point, what you were mentioning, what somebody was mentioning earlier about Arafel, that's possibly a little bit of retro, assuming we can maybe think of who scratched that, that kind of thing. I'm trying to think of how much time passes between. So maybe somebody could answer this for me. How much time passes between God Emperor of Dune and Heretics? Excuse me. Let me just catch up. I'm really bunged up at the minute, folks. We've had kind of stormy weather on and off, and the air pressure's been changing. We're all on decongestants, and my chest coughing away. So I hope it's not too troublesome. Let me see. Chris Gibson says the Fremen's way of life and the extreme dangers they face result in the idea that it's unwise to travel with people you wouldn't die with. Harsh but understandable. Damn this keyboard. Time for a new keyboard, Chris. I've worn out quite a few in my time. Yeah, unwise to travel with people that you wouldn't die with. There's the idea, I suppose, if you're going to die, that the universe will send you to that place no matter what. Isn't that something else that's in Dune, I think? Keith says the world population was about 2.5 billion when Hitler died. 11 million or 0.44%. I wonder what the galactic population was when Paul 80 billion. Did he kill a greater percentage than Adolf? Well, it's interesting because just about what you're talking about, there's the way they talk about it as statistics. It's very interesting, Keith. But what percentage would it have been? Again, we don't know what the percentage. We don't know the population of the Empire of 1,000 Worlds, do we? And we actually get to see really, if you think about it, we get to see very, very little of it. And if it's an Empire of 1,000 Worlds, we have to probably assume that most of them are habitable. And we don't really get to see many of the other houses either. So there's an awful lot of the Dune universe that's just, I suppose, the domination of Arrakis itself is part of it, But yeah, well, he talks about, what is it? He's sterile a bunch of planets. Is it about 60 planets in that same speech, Keith? So, and we can imagine that, as you say, the population growth over if we're at the year 2000, let's just go forward about 8,000 years. We would imagine that most of these planets would be pretty heavily populated. And the Fremen have been wandering around from planet to planet for some time. Get the impression that they seem to end up on quite difficult planets, I think. So, who knows? That's a good question. Keith says Leto first was meant to have the trappings of being admirable. Absolutely another charismatic leader trope. So whenever we do, I thought that Paul was coming in just before this, but we kept all of the Paul stuff for one big episode. But whenever we look at the deconstruction of the hero, the first two people that we look at together is Leto the First and the Baron Harkonnen. Not just because of that, what you're saying with the heroic trope, which is bang on, but also because both characters totally understand how to use a hero to manipulate their people, and it's in that you really do see what a manipulator. Leto the First, not particularly nice guy, I don't think. And again, we're supposed to question him, but at the end of the day, they all go, "What a great leader! What a..." And you watch the result of his great leadership, and it's honestly, if you can call after the whole thing in Dune, where everyone's dead, good leadership, then wow, it's the same as the good leadership at the Charge of the Light Brigade. If you see what I mean, it's not good leadership in my book. It's appalling decision making, and killing an awful lot of people. But it's a story. Um, so yeah, it is another one of those tropes that we're meant to invest in. And as I said, Leto the First is enshrined as part of Paul's myth. I wonder if Herbert presents a character that we're designed to have a primordial affinity for as an archetypal symbol for order. That's a really good question, Aqua Baby. Dune, there's a point that 1500 years, I believe Caron says, Daniel, Simon, thank you guys, 1500 years between the two. So there's a bit of an evolutionary little stretch there. Or just a wee bit of a time leap. So the idea that evolution starts to move quite quickly in the Dune universe, I think, on a realistic time scale. It's a very good question, Aquabu, and I'm racking my brains because we got if Herbert presents a character that we're designed to have a primordial affinity for as an archetypal symbol for order, I'd have to have a good think about that. What is an archetypal symbol for order? A straight line? Possibly. I'm trying to think. Order. Just to pick up my thread of thought, it's a very good question. Very good thought, actually, Aqua Baby. I don't have an answer for you right now. I will have a think about it. But the Dune series champions an order to chaos perspective. And it's supposed to be, and there's an argument that the Dune series is a response to Foundation. And Foundation is meant to be a chaos to order approach. A lot of, again, Donald E. Palumbo's book looks at this. Did I bring it up, by the way? I did, just to show it to you. As usual, I brought a few things up to show you. But this is the book. It is hard to get, by the way. Chaos Theory, Asimov's Foundation, and Robots, and Herbert's Dune. And it's the fractal aesthetic of epic science fiction by Donald E. Palumbo. So it is a good wee book, and I'm sure it can't be that hard to get. Let me see. Greenwood Press. I think that's them. That company that did a lot of those old science fiction books, but there's a lot of that in there. Let me see. Well, sorry. In terms of chaos, so it is an interesting thing. If we have an archetypal symbol for order, it's probably the Emperor. Now, just thinking about it, if this symbol, just in terms of what you're asking, Aqua Baby, I think that in terms of the order, that if we look at it as an order, that's why I was just thinking about, if we look at it as an order to chaos approach, then that disruption to order is at the very beginning of the Dune series, and it all really does focus around a power play for the throne. I think everyone's Leto the First going for the throne, so is the Baron, and so are the Bene Gesserit. Everyone's at it, and I think the Emperor's actions, probably out of pressure, but I'd say if you're looking for a symbol, a character that represents that, I'd go with the Emperor. And I mean as a representation, a symbol, as you say, yeah. Okay, let me just catch up, folks. So we all have this urge for order. You reckon? I don't know. Possibly. I'm quite a chaotic person. Though I do like having my books organized, I suppose. Yeah, there's something about it. But God Emperor to Heretics is 3,000 to 4,000 years. Keith. There we go. Sorry, something popping up there. 1,500 years. It's a good chunk. Leto the First openly brags to Paul that his propaganda corps are the best in the Imperium. You're on that. That's exactly all that. Yeah, best propaganda machine. Well, what do you need propaganda for? Propaganda is deceit, essentially. It's yeah. And at the end of the day, the Atreides armies, if you understand empires and stuff and how they work, um, the Roman Empire is a good one to look at this. Where do you get your army from? And it's from your lower. There's a term for it in the Roman Empire. It's called the proletariat. You might hear somebody sometimes insulting somebody, calling them a prole, for example. And the word has a different association, I think, with communism and so on. But it's simply that the good for having babies pretty much is kind of what it means in that sense. That's where it's the poor people that want them to have babies because that's where we get our army from. Whereas plebs are different things. Like plebeian class have are landed, I think, have actual property and stuff. Sorry, I'm way off on one. So, but yeah, propaganda, the best in the Imperium, Keith, as you point out. Leto II's an astute player of the political game, but at the same time, as I said, I think he's quite stupid. We're having a chat about all sorts of people can be stupid for all sorts of reasons. It's not it's not the special purview of one group of society or a group of whether it be educated or not. It's nothing to do with that. But I think Leto's very stupid in the end. And we could assume he's been quite clever up until that point. Let's just catch up. Excuse me. I'm going to take a wee sip of water here just for my throat. Sorry, black currant cordial. And my cold coffee. Okay. Lily Kralizec, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Lily, says, we know the worms weren't native to Arrakis, but I don't believe Herbert ever addressed where they originally came from or who brought them. Any ideas? I did all the work on this, Lily, and if you go to the community page on the Science Fiction Station on YouTube, you'll find a kind of diagram, but it doesn't have an introduction. It doesn't have a where did this come from, and you'll see that the title just says that the worm species as an introduced vector. And as I actually did one full reading of all 6 Dune books just to get the worms and their life cycle and what was going on there. So no, it was no idea. They are definitely a transplanted species, and that Arrakis is not a desert planet at the beginning. We get enough information for that, but I don't think so. There's possible hints at it, but you get a suggestion that maybe they were on Solusa Secunda once as well, but I don't think it's one of those mysteries, and I don't think Frank ever answered it. I can't say if Brian Herbert or Kevin J. Anderson. I know there's prequels, and I really have no idea. I don't know how many there are now, but I understand there's quite a lot. Chris says, Leto I had little choice but to comply with the Emperor's decree. In the same way, he has to pursue a vendetta against the Harkonnens. He knows the risks, but there are formalities he must follow. Well, he's well aware that he can run, which is another option. He has options. How you pursue the vendetta, I don't know. I think it's a point where Cloak and Dagger is going on, and I think it could have been sorted out pretty straightforward. Ultimately, Paul takes the whole. Isn't it? It gives Paul a legal. So there is a legal process within the Landsraad and the government. So if you like the structure, the political structure of the Dune universe, he could have been a smarter operator. To move your entire family onto a planet that you can never leave, because if you're living there for any small given amount of time, you're going to be completely addicted. The logic of it breaks down. How's the throne would have to, if he wants the throne would have to go to Arrakis, which it ultimately does. But the throne isn't on Arrakis; it's on goodness, is it Kaitan? Well, I don't know if we're told. Maybe somebody could answer this. I'm pretty sure we're not actually. What it is that happened to Solusa Secundus? It's where the Crinos used to live. I think, but no, it's one of the good. It's one of the mysteries of Dune, I think, and it's nice. Yeah, nice to have wee mysteries now and then. Leto the First has little choice but to comply with the Emperor's. Oh, sorry, I just read that one. To pursue a vendetta against the High Queen, he knows he risks, but these are formalities he must follow. I do think he has options there. Leto II and Children of Dune mentions that Daniel says Leto II and Children of Dune mentions that the worms were brought to Arrakis from some other place. However, he goes into no details of that statement whatsoever. Yeah, that's it. Pretty much all we know is they're transplanted. Keith has to work now. Bye, Keith. Say hi to the guys at work. Thanks for joining us, by the way. Aqua Baby says, "Isn't Arrakis a desert planet because of the worms? The worms were an invasive species." That's correct. And again, you'll get this. It's the little mini adventure of Pardo Kynes gives you some insight into this. But it's a desert planet because of the worms. But it used to have. We get the sense that there were plenty of oceans and seas on Arrakis. Again, it's just about jogging my memory, Aqua Baby. So a lot of this stuff will come up down the road a wee bit with the ecology episodes. Oh, more than welcome, Lily. It's a good question. But yeah, so to have a look at the life cycle of the worm was quite interesting, and it's based on pretty much the lamprey, which has a very similar. All of the stuff's coming up in the ecology section, but I had to lift Lily an awful lot of words out of this PhD, and an awful lot of that was about. Honestly, if you think about it, I did one complete reading to get all the stuff on the worms. It would have been a whole chapter on itself, and it ended up being one diagram, which actually, in terms of probably for all of you, it's actually probably a much more useful thing than to read an entire chapter of it. So there's a wee diagram on the community section of the YouTube channel here. And you see, it just says, I think the title says as an introduced vector or something like that on the bottom. But so it just has a beginning, but where that beginning is, so I didn't have any kind of arrow coming from it there. I think sand trout need a lot of water. Yeah, and also the terms, if you look at that diagram, Frank doesn't always use the same language to do with the same stages of the sandworm life cycle. But I find it very interesting, actually. Did a lot of research into it. And yeah, the lamprey comparison makes me quite happy with the newest movie design of the sandworms. Yeah, there's a particular set of the Dune covers, I think, that are. Oh goodness. Yeah, here we go. Oh goodness. Oh no, that's me book. The bowl of Minos has fallen down. Put that there. These covers here, particularly, I think, and. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this artist. Don't know if it's. Yeah, very sadly, I often don't put the name of the artist on books. I think that's an affront to the artist. I think he's quite well known. His Dune covers are really good. There we go. But yeah, very like the lamprey, sea lamprey, and we've put in a bit of research on the lampreys. Nearly speak. Sorry, on the lamprey's life cycle. And again, we've got some of those. I think I put the image up on the community board as well. But whenever we get to we do have an episode on the sandworms themselves. Sand trout need a lot of water. Where are we catching up? The lamprey comparison. Oh, that's it. There we go. So I have caught up. So yeah, the worms are pretty interesting, I think, and they're meant to be a half plant, half animal. So you need to start thinking about even where did they come from? I suppose not just location, but how are they created? And it would suggest some kind of genetic, manipulation or engineering of some kind. I think, but yeah, there's an awful lot to do with the worms. I think they're pretty interesting. And as I said, we talk about we have the Abraxas coin in the video, which I think is a 3rd century Coptic coin. And if you look at that, you're looking at a coin pretty much. That's your god emperor. So that's that idea of Abraxas. And that if you understand that idea, that fits very well with Leto II. And I suppose that within the early Christian traditions over the first 3-4 centuries, there's all sorts of chopping and changing of ideas, and which books go in and out of the Bible, and a lot of this stuff, and that there's various interpretations. But that kind of idea of God, I suppose, is based on having a bit of a thought exercise. Well, if you think about it, it is a kind of a thought exercise on what it means to be a god. That you're omniscient, you're omnipresent, you're omnipotent, and well, within I suppose certain religions maybe omnibenevolent. I don't know, but the God Emperor is certainly not omnibenevolent. Yeah, it's so the whole thing with the worms is the worms works on a number of different levels. And I suppose there's an ecological lesson from Herbert with the worms, and we are looking at the lampreys, but it's because of their life cycle actually that it's a very it's an uncanny similarity to the life cycle that Herbert has conceived. If you can work it, the problem with it is it's never obvious to you guys, and I'll tell you this: if you ever want to figure out that you can do it yourself, but you need to take the 6 books and grab a pen and work through it every time you find a mention of a worm. Really kind of see what if you've got anything to do it, and that's exactly what I had to do. And by the end of it, I had and then let's apply this to, I'd written it all out and then sort of drew it out, and it's complicated, but he only gives you bits and pieces throughout the 6 books, and it's another way of reading Dune, by the way. You can read Dune just to figure out what the heck's going on with the worms, and you'd be surprised. It is an interesting way to read it. But there you go. Yeah, it's all to do with water, by the way. It's Aqua Baby, and how they assist water and seal it off and then absorb it and stuff. And it's the worms that just wreck, and the relationship between water. The interesting thing, if you think about the God Emperor, excuse me, all the different attempts. I've often said this: all the different attempts to kill him, and right from the very beginning, if you understand worms and water and what water does to worms. You can kill the God Emperor with a super soaker. All it would take is a water pistol, and nobody ever, over all those years in the Dune universe, they're all trying las guns and face dancers and all sorts of things to try and kill him. And they can't blow up the planet because they need the planet for melange. But nobody ever thought about squirting him with some water. Just help me, kind of Wizard of Oz type thing. There is a little bit of I think there's a little bit of the Wizard of Oz himself in just thinking about that in the God Emperor as well. So there we go. I'm going to take a wee sip of fluids here. So if anybody's got any questions or comments, Leto II, fire away, folks. Always happy to have a go at answering. Come on, Super Soaker isn't nearly as freaking laser. Of course, the laser beams don't work, really, do they? He covers his face, but aye. I just thought nobody thought of it, It's if you have an enemy and you want to know how to destroy your enemy, the first thing you're going to think about is what are its weaknesses. And, let me see. Let's look at the physical traits of this individual. Human, maybe not, but worm. Okay, how do you And it also kind of sounds silly if you think about it. It's one of the silly wee things of Dune. The Ronan, hello, by the way, nice to see you, is they talk about how to destroy or capture, what it takes to take out a worm early on in Dune. Why has nobody done this? I think, and it's, again, nobody's, what about we squirt them with a bit of water? It's a funny thing. It's just one of the wee flaws in the logic of it if we follow it, Yeah, I quite, Karen, I think one of the things that you were saying about the worm design is I haven't seen it too much. It's one of the points in the advertising for the film. That we didn't see too much of the worm, so I'm quite curious to see it properly. But yeah, if it has an appearance to the lamp, similar to the lamprey, I think then that's a pretty good, decent looking. Has a sense of that. What the worm should be like, I think, I don't know. It's funny. I know super soakers aren't as cool as laser beams. Yeah, you're right, by the way, Ron. The vulnerability to water is not known, but just as a problem solver, I think I did get there pretty quick. Probably had the best propaganda in the galaxy. Sounds like Leto the First, or but like a Carlsberg advert there, isn't it? Probably the best tyrant in the universe. Lily says, I always wondered how Leto would have reacted to a shield. Hmm. Well, the worms go nuts for them, don't they? It's quite interesting. I imagine that you could use the shields as weapons as well. But yeah, based on his, it's a good ponder, Lily. But I would imagine based on his on the worms and how they react to shields, I'd imagine that the worm would probably take over and he would go nuts and kill, flatten or destroy whatever was there. Let's see. I never noticed the resemblance of the Sphinx and the evolved god Emperor before. Mm. We're having a chat about this, Ron. Have a look at the Abraxas coin. So the idea is meant to be a worm, I suppose. The idea is it with a lion's mane and a man's head. But there is something, I suppose, of the Sphinx. To a degree, you're talking about an androsphinx, by the way. I'm assuming of the Egyptian variety rather than the female monster from Greek mythology. Those kind of I mean there are those kind of attributes of, again, within the whole mythological thing, that there are different attributes to Leto the Second. I suppose the worm, but we're not doesn't really explore it too much. But he has a very particular look, and yeah. I agree, Ron. The worm would freak out, maybe go nuts, and that's fine. But the Sphinx is one of those. The Sphinx in Egypt is quite interesting, I think. Two different cultures to do with Thebes, but those kind of animals are kind of, I suppose, animal spirit type deity, animalistic beings, and are quite common in that part of the world. They all around the ancient world. And they're often combinations of different animals, chimeric animals and so on. But yeah, it does have it to a degree. And I suppose if you actually, well, do you know something? That's a pretty interesting point, Ron, because obviously the one leader that from his other memory that he brings forward to help him to partake of his cruelty is the Egyptian pharaoh who's called Harum. His Greek name is Cheops. So the pyramid of Cheops and the Sphinx, I think, is it one of his? Right next to each other. It's an interesting point. The Egyptian Sphinx was shot off. Egyptian Sphinx face was shot off by German soldiers. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. Damage to old world artifacts and stuff like that. I've been to Rome. I wonder if where have I got this here? Could I show it to you? And I kind of went around Rome with old maps, and used to fall in. I don't follow the tour guides, if you know what I mean. I've only been there once, but what I did was I kind of attached myself a wee bit. I was doing my own thing. I was kind of listening to what tour guides were saying, and the thing I was after was nobody bothered paying attention to it at all, and I wanted to find the Augustan Arch because there's only a couple of bits of it, like a couple of bricks left, basically. I managed to get a photo of it right next to it, and not one person paid any bit of attention to it at all. I thought it was hilarious. The Ishtar Gate is my favorite representation of animal figures being used to ward off evil spirits. There's a term for it. It's apropotaic is the term you're looking for. I know that one. It's just very hard to say, Daniel. Yes, door knockers, for example, with Medusa heads on them are known as gorgonions, and they're apopatreic symbols is the word you're looking for. So to ward off the evil eye, that kind of thing. The Ishtar Gate is, I believe, in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, Daniel, but I actually wanted to go see it I was talking about this the other day that I went to the wrong museum in Berlin, and ended up being quite happy. Um, I think I ended up in the Alta Museum, and I saw a lot of Greek and Rome. I had a fantastic time in it. But at the time, the bust of Nefertiti was touring, and it was there, and I got to have a look up close and personal. It was fantastic. So I much lamented not being. I wanted to see the Ishtar, the seals of the Ishtar Gate. I've got it on the back of a book here. It's on the back of my copy of Gilgamesh, actually, Epic of Gilgamesh. And it told me what museum it was in, and that's kind of, that's all the whole thing about why I wanted to go there. But lots of those kind of things in the ancient world, I have to say, and they're very interesting. Bark Lounger, hello Bark Lounger. Hi, enjoy your Dune videos and general commentary. I'm new, but I think you have a great live show, so I'll try to catch up when I can. Great job, live show. Yeah, thank you very much, Bark Lounger. This is just me sitting in my wee. This is the doghouse, as I like to call it. We have much as we have the pretense of being a space station, but it's a very small wee room, and it's just this work's quite old, but I just wanted to try and bring it to a Dune audience, really, Dune fans, and I thought I'd have a go at this. Because there's a lot of old complications and all with it. And I thought, but it's become. I'll be doing this every night, Bark Lounger, and since we're running these videos one a night until the 21st of October when Dune comes out here, and it's great fun, and I'm enjoying it enormously. So welcome to the party. It's just a bit of crack, and I don't know if I need to explain that term to you guys. By the way, do you all understand what I mean by a bit of crack? Because a cousin of mine got beat up quite badly in America a long time ago for using that term, and it's the crack, from Northern Ireland is the banter, the society, the enjoyment of humor and telling of stories and stuff. So just thought I'd double check that in case you were wondering what I'm talking about. But the banter, as we say, we'd say in Northern Ireland, all Irish people say you enjoy the crack, the chat, So just in case you're wondering. It's spelled Craic, by the way. So thank you very much, Bark Lounger. And got any questions for us, fire away, and we'll do our best to answer. Or any comments, or all things Dune, science fiction in general. Harum is what we got thinking about that relationship. Yeah, it's interesting how many little things link you to. It went ping in my head as soon as because I was thinking Sphinx, and then you're going, yeah, hang on, Egyptian pharaohs. Thank you very much, Ron99. Little things can make connections within the Dune universe, and there are so many of them. Soldiers under Napoleon used it for target practice. Yeah. So if I've been in Rome, had a look at the Colosseums full of bullet holes, and all sorts of these places get damaged. If you look at the 7 wonders of the world and how many of them are left standing, but you can. Excuse me. If you have a wee look at them on Wikipedia, you can kind of get a sense of when and where they were destroyed, if you know what I mean. Very sad, yeah, but very interesting. These kind of mega structures in the ancient world. And if you look into them, by the way, a lot of people think the ancient world is full of. I'll use the word primitive, which is the wrong. These people aren't clever. They are really, really smart. Really smart. I think, very impressive, the ancient world. Almost all of the cultures, probably all of them, I'd say. Recreation is in Berlin, and it's on my bucket list to see. It says, there's parts of there's different parts. The Pergamon Museum, I think, has different aspects of large structural artifacts. I think that that was what I was kind of going to see. Bear with me 1 second, folks. I'm not sure if it is here. Oh goodness, Judge Dredd falling over. No, I don't see it. I have my copy of Gilgamesh somewhere. Somebody was asking me last night about Jerry Cornelius, by the way. So, no, Dredd's taking a fall. You all right, Dredd? There we go. Put that there. There we are. Bobbleheads fired over. Where are we? And the only kind of Michael Moorcock stuff that I have, the Jerry Cornelius stuff, by the way, just quickly, was Life and Times of Jerry Cornelius. And the other one that we got is the Entropy Tango for, can't remember who was asking me about it. But there we go. And I think just quickly, that's the wee box set that I had, which is the Hawkman books. These are my favorite things here in terms of books, by the way, folks. These kind of little, the individual paperbacks. These are the ones that you used to get in the libraries, where you get book 2 or book 3. But these little collections of them, I have Asimov's Foundation like this. Don't have too many, but I've got the Riverworld series as well. But I think they're really nice. But that was it. That was the 2 Jerry Cornelius books that I had there. Excuse me. Let's catch up a wee bit then. But yeah, I've only been to Berlin once, and none of my nobody wanted to go with me to the museum, so I went on my own, had a great time. I highly recommend the museums in Berlin. I quite like Berlin, enjoyed the place. Let's see. Alia Reflection: was she the only Bene Gesserit or preborn female whose dominant inner voice was male? Well, we'll go with, we've had a wee bit of a chat about Alia, and depending on we've had a few interesting interpretations. There's been we've had that perhaps the Baron was hermaphroditic, I think, but generally, I think my own personal opinion is that it's the madness that being an abomination causes, I suppose. We are informed that madness is a common thing that happens to abomination, and it's particularly frowned upon because it creates madness in you have to imagine that they are being preborn. So I'm pretty sure that the Baron is there because she's mad. It's that he's not in her other, and it could be otherwise, I said, but it's the only one that really makes sense. And as I said, I think there's a touch of Ophelia in Alia at that point in the books, if you see what I mean, and that she's ever progressing and towards a tragic end. So that's the best we can go with that one. Ronan, it's my own opinion, but I think she's just genuinely insane. We were also talking about, I know I keep bringing this up, but if you look at the Helsing anime, the cartoon, there's a little cartoon at the end of each one with the main female character with the Baron Harkonnen in her mind, and it's a very interesting little set of cartoons. And and the Baron looks like the Baron from David Lynch's Dune. Let me see. So is Herbert's prescience a mystical power? Is it grounded in reality somehow? Pre-knowledge. No, it's not grounded in reality at all. Nobody has prescience. You can predict something based on information and data, but I would say absolutely not. No. If you're prescient, you'd be very rich, and you're doing your best not to tell anybody about it, I suppose. I always thought it was a higher order of mathematical computation which allowed for accurate prediction of probability, but I could be wrong. You get that sense that that's supermentat, if you will. You get that sense that there is a level of prediction, or prescience, if you like, but that it's not absolute. Now, prescience can't be anything else, I suppose. You're either, it's a bit like, the oxymoron, a false prophet. You can't really be a false prophet. You're either a prophet or you're not. If what you're saying is not true, then how can you be prophesizing? It's that kind of thing, I think. So no, I mean, I'm very good at predicting things, but that's because I can't. I'm very good at following trends, and it's just I'm one of those people that, somebody tells me, you said that was going to happen, and also, but they're general things, if you like, being specific like that. Yeah, it's got something to do. I think Lily's right in a degree, but it becomes an innate ability in the mind of a human being, or if you consider that the Kwisatz Haderach's not really human, then. So it's a tricky one, but does it exist? Is prescience a real thing? No, and it would have to be. It's an absolute thing. Pre-science, break the word up, means before you have prior knowledge. So in that sense, it's to know something is to absolutely know it. In that sense, I think. So you can either be prescient or you're not, and that's kind of where a lot of the things fall down logically for me. But again, it's a science fiction book on one level. happy to have wee things like this in it. So again, it depends on how you look at. You said is Herbert's presence a mystical power within the Dune universe, and it depends on who's presenting it, I think. Because Lily said, yeah, mathematical. The guild's focus is mathematics, pretty much in higher order computations. But the Bene Gesserit politics, but while masquerading as a religious order. So the mystical part, mystique is behind a lot of things in the Dune universe, and it's part of Herbert's warning about how individual people's groups, whatever, create mystique. That sense of special, we're a special cadre of people with you get this in all sorts of secret societies and all sorts of nonsense, and the military has it absolutely. Every single military regiment has its trappings, and it's etc etc. Chris. So I hope that answers. Well, again, just my opinions, by the way, are as good as everybody else's in this Dune universe. So I know it's me doing all the talking, but my ideas are not absolute, folks. By the way, the one thing that we have said about the Dune universe is a lot of the interpretations, regardless of which way you go, there's enough evidence to back up almost all of them, and that's because we're talking about Frank. A couple of these are going to be red herrings, but a couple of them are not, and you don't quite know what he's going to do with them. So it's great fun. Irish loanwords, says Chris. There's a farmer's saying in the north of Lancashire, which loosely translated says, Ireland's the next field over. I have Irish and Scottish ancestors. Fair enough, fine. The big field. We skip across the pond, as they would say. Yeah, I don't know. I think crack's one of those words, and to enjoy the crack, I think it's one of those words that's got out globally, but you're never quite sure with Irish, I suppose. So, but it's just the banter and the friendliness and stuff like that. It's one of those words that doesn't. We talked about words that don't translate well because it's a whole sense of it means so much over here actually. But as much as you could say hello to somebody here, you could just say, "How's the crack?" And that's kind of how's your life in general, and it has so many meanings, but it is a one word that, as I said, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a nice word, I suppose. Let's just catch up a wee bit. Let's see. Do the prescient see the future or create it? That's an interesting. Well, that's to do with the Golden Path, isn't it, Lily? Oh, here, sorry, I missed. I'm sorry, Lily. I'll back up a wee bit. I've missed a few people's comments here. I'll come back to that. Grimdark Elven Lore Master. Hi, Grimdark. Jodorowsky's Dune wanted a violent torture scene for Duke Leto cutting off his limbs. Yeah. Don't really need to see that on a movie screen. Quite frankly, I don't enjoy things like that. I've seen too much in real life to enjoy things like that on a to just go, why bother, I'm always more impressed by. I think Babs was saying that she hasn't read, not into horror too much, and I'm not really a fan of horror literature, modern horror literature, but I do like the kind of Victorian era stuff, that the Gothic sensibility. I'm much more impressed by people who can scare you by what you can't see. You don't have to. You can hear someone being tortured, and it's much worse than seeing them. But I think there's some stuff that's a wee bit visceral for the screen. Well, we can take so much. It's about what we were talking about, how an author or a director can inflict stuff. But I certainly think Jodorowsky's got a sense of the grotesque and a bit of a shock jock, I think. I can't comment too much on his films, by the way. I told you as I told you the other day, I watched a couple of his movies in the early 90s under conditions that I can't recall them properly. And I'm being very euphemistic there, and I'm not going to expand on that in any other way. But I have watched them, but I can't. There's parts of them I can't separate in my head, and I just don't remember. I'll have to watch them again, I suppose. But I kind of got the sense that I maybe wouldn't want to. I don't know. I keep an open mind. Let's see. Barklander says, thanks very much. Speaking of Gilgamesh, is it true Easter came from pre-Christian pagan origins? Absolutely. Easter is a Germanic goddess of spring. Some Catholic scholars disagree with many of the aspects, but still interesting to say the least. Look up, Bark Lounger, what's called the Roman interpretation, and you'll understand how the church operates. It's the same way how the Roman Empire operates. And okay, it's originally called the Greek interpretation. Then it became the Roman interpretation. It's called Interpretatio Romana, and the one that I live under is called the English interpretation. Simply put, how does an empire conquer? And if you believe, by the way, this is not, well, you'll get a lesson from Paul. How does he do it? It's with his legions. He's wrong. If you ask yourself, how did Rome conquer the 1/4 of the known world? Rome's a small city-state, and it's to do with religion. The Romans are very, very smart that way, and they have a foreign policy. Not just a foreign policy; it's called the Roman interpretation. And a great example of that is the city of Bath in England, whose old name's Aqua Solis, by the way. And the people there worshipped a goddess called Solus, who's a nature, pagan spirit. And so here's how the Romans would operate. Basically, the Romans will turn up. They'll not slaughter everybody or anything like that nonsense. They'll bring in the high priest, Pontifex Maximus, or something like that, and basically go, hey, your god, we don't speak the same language, but your god, Solus, is our god, Minerva, and I'm her priest. And she wants us to be as one. So if you don't mind, guys, we're going to build a nice temple to your goddess Solus, our goddess Minerva, and put up statues and stuff, and to show you that we're and it's a form of religious control, because I'm her priest and I'm going to start telling you what to do. So they build a temple to a goddess called Minerva Solus. Double barrel name. It's religious assimilation. This is how the Roman Empire conquers. It has legions to back it up, but it doesn't have that many of them. And it's pretty much how the British Empire works with the King James Bible. You can't continue to expand an empire by wiping out people or by control, because sooner or later your people are spread out too thin. So you need people to become the empire, if you see what I mean. So a lot of Romans would conquer a region, then recruit immediately out of that for the army, that kind of thing. But goodness, that was a bit of I better run back a wee bit there, folks. Sorry. So no, Easter is a pagan, absolutely. She's a Germanic goddess, and she's a nature divinity. She's a goddess of spring. Look it up, but you probably find it on Wikipedia somewhere. But I don't think it's spelled Easter. You might a variation of that spelling. It would be phonetically the same as Easter. But Christmas Day is not. It's another one of those. It's an awful lot of gods have a party on Christmas Day, but it's originally meant to be the winter solstice. And within Christianity, you've got Jesus, you've got Mithras, Sol Invictus, Hor. All of these people have the same day. It's religious overlap, and in Ireland, it's a big thing here, where early Christian churches are built on top of pagan sites. Hope that answers your question. Do the present see the future or create it? Lily, back to your point. Very good. They can't create it, I suppose. Just in terms of a logical exercise, they have to see it. It's foreknowledge before something happens. Though I suppose science fiction explores this quite a lot, Lily. Very much so with the old. If we're talking in the real world, by the way, folks, some of these things are me presenting real world logic to. If we're moving into the realms of science fiction, then if we have time machine, this is where what I think is wonderful about sci-fi is this philosophy of ideas. Then absolutely we can go to where the prescient can see the future and create it. Particularly like those kind of bootstrap curved close time loop stories. But yeah, the trappings of a god, prescience, omnipotence, omniscience, all seeing, all knowing, I suppose, all being. Pretty hellish. David says, I love the dialogue in God Emperor when Leto demonstrates some of his prescience by saying things like, I infer it. It remains unexplored enough to remain mysterious, but there's a hint of reality. Yeah, the God Emperor is such a, he's revealing little bits. I suppose he's always aware of what he's doing and how things will affect it. It is he must seal a path with his prescience, I suppose. Keith Club says, I should have said supernatural instead of mystical. super above nature. Not too sure of the term, but I would almost say that they're synonyms: mystic, magical, supernatural is above nature. I'm one of those people, Keith, that believes there's no such thing as unnatural, or if you see, I mean, the word nature covers everything in the universe for me. But no, it's supernatural. There's a missing thing in Dune, and we don't know who it is or what it is, and it could well be another, you know. And if we have the God Emperor's not quite a god, not by, well, depends on what you define as a god. Again, the gods to me are a bunch of beings from a race of beings from Greek mythology. That's who the gods are, and they're different from the Titans. If you see what I mean. But language is interesting in that sense. But there is some kind of, you know, we talked about this, folks. Just to mention about the Bene Gesserit, that as a part of the appendices of Dune, there's a talk about the breeding program and how they mess things up at Arrakeen, and it basically suggests to you that everything that they've done is not of their own doing, that they've been manipulated by some outside entity. And I think the general gist of it is that whatever that outside entity is the returning thing that was meant to be at the Battle of Kralizec, etc. But we have interpretations of that, So feels similar. Where are we? Just to catch up, folks. Let's see. Do you want to do? Feels similar about some of Robert E. Howard's writings, heavy with verisimilitude. Yeah, there is that about. I quite like Conan. Often what Conan faces is magical, but there's the pragmatism and the reality to Conan's behavior. I think he's often quite fatalistic. I think Conan. It's kind of oh, here's a god. I'm absolutely buggered, but you know what? I'm just gonna go out in style. I think it's very, and he often just because of that doesn't give him. I think I get that. I'm reading through the early Conans at the minute, and they're ones that I've read individually here and there. So I'm about halfway. So I've got a good bunch to go. And I'm actually, I think we'll be doing. He's all given me some ideas for stuff for the station. So quite possibly we've got some new audiobooks coming up. But we're looking at what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a version of Sultana's Dream, and then the Micromegas, and then we've been thinking about doing the Sword of the Phoenix, and possibly just the kind of that old kind of fashion literature. But we're just thinking Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, these kind of things, and maybe just giving you a wee bit of a sample of them and having a look at it. They're interesting and they're fun. But yeah, I Lovecraft's writing is really good. I know Lovecraft gets a hard time, again, because of his personality and his attitudes, but he's an excellent writer, as is Robert E. Howard. Pick out any of the pulp writers around at that time and just compare their writing. They're really good, I think. And it's interesting for that kind of, if you know what I mean, magazine pulp fiction of that era. They're really quality writers. God Emperor allowed for the possibility of randomness and chance in his golden path. Paul didn't, and tried to conform the future to his vision, which again is odd because it's a juxtaposition to Leto. Yeah, we're constantly getting that within the Dune series, Ron. And again, I think something that's meant, we're always remember this, I think. The biggest critic of Paul is Leto II. It's his own father. And as much as he's educating us about some things, he is criticizing. Let's look at and criticizing his father in different ways, I think. But he's a massive critic of Paul Atreides. And I don't know if that's kind of at that part in the story where Paul's gone, that maybe at that point Frank really wants us to know, in case you hadn't figured it out, that you should be critiquing Paul Atreides as a hero, that he's actually doing a bit of that for us. But often, many Janus pairings and syzygies within the Dune universe, guys. It's a common motif. Let's see. Where do we go? What is the Ronald says, my granddaughter is named Aoife. Laughing out loud. You will say it with no problem. Yeah, it's the Irish version of Eve, isn't it? Aoife. I actually, believe it or not, I have a story about that, but I used to have a student a long time called Aoife. And the first time I met her, I actually did not know how to pronounce her name at all. And because coming from a classical background, then if you're stuck on a name from ancient Greece or something like that, the main thing you can do is just realize that you pronounce every letter. So I actually thought her name was Ioife. And I asked her, I didn't say I asked her to get her to pronounce her name. And I was, because it doesn't look like Eve, does it? So it's Aoife, I believe. But you do get some slight variations within the Irish names around as well. But yeah, I hope I did pronounce it correctly. Crack here, US, refers to a smokable form of cocaine. With the C, crack with the CK also refers to crack cocaine here, but the crack, it's the crack. CRAIC is a, yes, I'm well aware of that one, Aqua Baby. That's why my cousin got beat up. They thought he was talking about crack cocaine. He was in a bar in New York and happened to say to somebody that he was enjoying the crack enormously, and they kicked the shit out of him and threw him out the bar. I think that was in the 70s. Haven't heard anyone in the States use crack. I referred the meaning from the context. There you go. I would see where someone could get the wrong idea about that phrase. Yeah. Yeah. That's a phrase you'll hear every day over here. Post Constantine, everywhere the army went, so did the church. Constantine's a person who uses religious icons in a very interesting manner. He's the Constantinian cross. The story of Constantine, how he becomes Roman emperor, is very, very interesting. Of the three surviving Roman arches in Rome, one of them's his. He's your first Christian Roman emperor. Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, I believe. But I think he becomes, once he becomes emperor in 312, I think. Maybe 311, 312, I'm pretty sure. Interesting. Interesting guy, Constantine. It sounds, Mark Lounder says, it sounds interesting how origins are lost, and today Easter is just a holiday for egg hunts and chocolate bunnies. Thank you. I'll delve in and have a look. There are a lot of common, there are a lot of religious festivals in the ancient world, and Christianity has particularly occupied and settled over a lot of them. And so it is a common thing, I suppose. If you think when one culture or religion overturns another, they don't want competition. And so it's a very common thing. You can look at some myths in context of religious overturns, possibly, and one of them would be the rape of Medusa. And what exactly is that about? It's because it's a horrible myth. Medusa means guardian, I think, and my guitars, by the way, this one is called Uriel. Uriel Darkstar is the name of this guitar. Uriel means far-ranging, and it's one of the sisters of Medusa. And the bass behind me, that one, is called Stethano, which means forceful, and that's the other name. That's the name of the other sister of Medusa. In case you haven't figured out, guys, my guitars are all named after either monsters or female monsters or heroines from Greek mythology. What does that say about me? Sorry, I'm gonna stop clapping my hands like that. That's terrible. Give a bit of bang on the microphone there. Let me just catch up a wee bit again. Let's see. Soldier reflection is on point as the soldiers were gone for decades at time, melding into the culture. Excuse me. A criticism was made about the fake Fremen post-Paul's jihad. He knew he wasn't God in the ultimate sense of the word, but instead something terrible the universe had never seen before. Yeah. Well, we talked about the museum Fremen. I'm in a culture that has exactly that sort of thing. My term for it's retarded atavism. In the non-pejorative sense, retardation is to slow or re-slow the development of something again, and atavism is to be like your grandfathers, I suppose. So the ultimate. Somebody was asking earlier on about the virtues of the Fremen, but then whenever we see what ultimately happens to them, it's pretty bad, you know. and what they end up is they have they've debased themselves, they've degraded themselves. I think, and that their harshest critic absolutely is the God Emperor. He despises them. I think, if I remember correctly. Lovecraft and Howard are up there for me, both interesting characters and works. Yes, they are. In terms of, I don't read many biographies, by the way, guys, but I have. Sean says hello, popping in to say hi, cracking toast grommet. Hi, Sean. But I have read biographies of Lovecraft and Howard a good while ago. But it's simply, as David said, they're both very interesting men. Perfect enunciations. Cracking toast grommet. Yeah, I love Wallace and Gromit. David, I read Lovecraft intensely during the time before finishing the Dune saga, and those influences on my imagination nearing the end of the series were an enrichment. Ferkin Kellick, hi everyone. Hello, Ferkin. I never named any of my guitars. My basses are named Helga and Brunhilde. Yes, museum Fremen was the term. That's yeah. There we go. So yeah, as I said, I have my own term for it, and there is a particular link between as much as we talk about the different cultures that influence the Fremen, particularly the work that Herbert's doing at the time. God Emperor of Dune was released simultaneously, pretty much the same year as the White Plague. So there is that kind of we talk a wee bit about some of the Irish kind of it's one of the things that I find interesting. There's Irish icon or mythical icons and stuff like that. Traits of Irish mythology in there. A lot of people see all different myths from around the world, Who's the most tragic figure in Dune is a question that Ron99 asks. A matter of opinion, I suppose. I'd love for you all to give me who you think. So give us your answer, folks. We'll run through them. But for me, Alia, I think. No, David, it's Alia. There you go. Let's see what you all think. Who's the most tragic? If we can get a wee bunch of get a wee run around the room here, let us know. So that's 2 for 2, I suppose. What about yourself, Ron? What do you think? I can't look too much. I know that you can understand tragedy quite well, but I can't look at the God Emperor in too tragic a way. I think he's kind of too curious about what's going to happen to him. As would anybody, I think. The Ronan, it's Alia. I don't know. I'm pretty sure don't want to speak for you, Dabs, but I'm pretty sure Alia is your favorite character. But I'll let you answer yourself. I know you're generally sometimes listening and not typing. So Alia's a pretty, in terms of tragedy, I think Alia's a popular character. Alia, maybe why, but she's also a piece at the end. Not enough of why, I think. Chris, Alia, certainly tragedy, pretty much somewhat her story arc, yeah. And it's interesting, I suppose, that the Alia is part of a syzygy with Paul and part of a Janice pairing as well. And that I think it's one of those things that's just, I think she has a great character, and her end is a logical conclusion, and it's sad and it is tragic. You get another pairing with Leto II and Ganima. And I think what Ganem is massively underused, and we know that just with there's an underuse of female characters, certain female characters as we move on a bit. Keith Kolb says, "I'll buck the trend and say Thuffer Howard." Is the most tragic. He's badly used, isn't he? I think the real sad thing he's not altogether stupid. He's meant to be one of the greatest mentats, not just a mentat. I think, is it the way the Baron points out, he's not just a mentat, but he's a mentat who's been trained to kill. I think he's taken quite easy and he's manipulated quite easy. So he's another one of those characters that I think again, if we're looking at Dune from the future as a part of a future history. He's a character who's bigged up. Everybody's legendary around the Atreides. He doesn't seem to be that, really, if he's the guy that's running the plan machine, if you like, he's the intelligence officer. A lot of what happens to House Atreides arguably could be his fault. Characters with potential are underused is another theme all throughout the series. They're right under, absolutely. It's a particular cadre of characters, though, Caron, for me. I'll tell you the ones that I think are underused really badly. And it's Ganima, Siona, and Shiana. Those three are how they're used. And they should all be very major characters. They are. It's maybe my memory, but I always just thought that, particularly Ganima. I thought there was just something, and I often don't understand Ganima. I think it's something that he preferred to leave in the past. Furkan's asking, what's your favorite character in all the Dune books? I guess again you can answer this one, guys. I think we were having a wee bit of a chat tonight, Furkan. I think for a lot of people, we'll get some other contrary answers, but for me, it's the God Emperor himself, Leto II. We kind of asked a wee bit about that tonight. This episode, whenever we released them before without the subtitles and the sound, was a bit dodgy. This episode on Leto II is the most popular one. I've had about 33,000 hits or something like that on it. And the wee science fiction station that we're doing, it's quite modest thing. We're not that kind. So it was a big success for us, for me. I think in terms of actually people looking at a part of the Ph.D, as opposed to nobody ever going from 30 odd thousand people looking at your work to having no one ever seen it at all is a great thing. I know people going about, I can't wait to get 1 million hits and all this stuff on YouTube, but not too bothered about such things, to be honest. It's the whole point of this to me is get the work out to people who want to read it, or present it in an accessible way and let them enjoy it. Because it's a bit detailed, and it's the nature of Dune, I suppose. So I'll go with the God Emperor, Furkan. Rollins says, disagree on the underuse of female characters. Females are central from Norma Semba to Jessica to Siona to Shiana. I'm not saying. Happy for you to disagree with me there, Ron. I'm not saying he underuses his female characters. I'm trying to remember Siona and Shiana, and they're kind of a wee bit vague in my memory. But I think we're kind of done with Shiana. Are we done with both of them at the end of God Emperor? I can't remember. Or is it? Oh dear. Oh no. Siona's in God Emperor and Shiana's in Heretics. Is that right? Memory, folks. Apologies. But I think it really my gripe is focused on Ganima. I think it's just that she's really that part of that pairing with Leto in Children of Dune, and it's just that that's it. She's relegated to the past, sadly. I suppose there are a lot of characters, but when we take that leap between Children of Dune and Leto II, and I do agree. Actually, maybe I'm just being a bit silly. You're right to disagree with me, because actually it's really that character. I think I'm trying to remember, but I think Shiana and Siona are reasonably well done. But we get a lot of these good new female characters in the Bene Gesserit books, as I recall. Dario Drad and likes of that, and again, some of them we didn't get to see quite as far as where we were going with them. Murbella, isn't it? I'm trying to remember. I might be naming is Murbella maybe an honored mantra, and Rebecca, the Wild Reverend Mother. So Shiana is later. Norma Semba, I think is that from the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson books. Not remembering that name. Ron in 99. Duncan was it's just, I think my big gripe is about Ganima, but it's post Children of Dune. I really like Ganima as a character, and I actually really like the fact the twins are kind of work very well on a lot of levels. Excuse me. Take a sip. Duncan was a graduate of the Guinness Sword School. Is there ever an explanation of how Gurney got to be such a skilled fighter? I don't know. I'm reading through Dune at the minute, and I haven't come across anything like that. There's a few bits, but I think about how he got his scar. Not too sure, to be honest, Keith. There, maybe somebody else can let you know. Fade Rotha was underused, says Bob. Yeah, I'd agree there as well. And again, that's the nature of Frank. It's at the end fades the opponent, isn't he? But there's potentially this Casimir Fenring who's got the. But I mean, we're kind of told by Frank, here's your this really dangerous guy who, but yeah, he just couldn't be bothered, and then we deal with Fade, and we kind of feel like Fade's is kind of a, I don't know, a second rate bad guy for Paul at the end compared to Casimir Fenring. We kind of get the sense that there's someone truly deadly that could be. I mean, no, Fade's deadly, but you get the sense that Fenring would have no problems dispatching him. Again, no Ganima, then Darby, Odrad, and Siona, etc. Shanna is later. So there's a bit of the Gurney story in the Anderson books, says Babs there. Sheena's in Heretics. Oh, it's one of those, sorry, Shiana. It's one of those character names, isn't it? If you know what I mean, almost every jungle girl ever is called Shiana or Sheena or something of the jungle. And I think that's where my confusion's coming from. It's I don't know. There's a penchant for, what is it? There's one particular name. I think everybody loves it in films these days, the Disney universe or something. Trying to remember what's the name of the main female protagonist in the new Star Wars films. Well, that's the name I'm thinking of, I think. Possibly. I don't know, is it? Anyway, let's have a wee look. Remember, Babs. He spits on them, Babs. The book. You should save your moisture, Keith. Have better water discipline than that. Yeah, it has something to do with the Harkonnens and being a slave or something. And there's I think, is it something to do with Gurney's family being tortured and killed or something by the Harkonnens, if I can remember correctly? But I think it's the Raban that has given him his scar. But that, I think that's what I've picked up in Dune, up to where I'm at. Yeah, Raban who gave him the scar. Yeah, in the slave pits. Leia. No, is it? It's like I don't know. It's like everybody's called Kara or something like that. Kira, is that it? Some one of those names. The number of female characters at the minute that have a name similar to that is ridiculous. Hand-to-hand combat, Ron saying Leia. Hand-to-hand combat is almost compulsory in the Dune universe. Some men will be competent, some will be bloody useless, and a few will excel. Perhaps Gurney is simply one of the latter. Well, the noble houses all get their formal training and stuff like that, and it's often a common trope, particularly in military function. You know, the en garde, and then that kind of formal fighting. If you know, not that that's what you see in Dune, but often compared to someone who's downright dirty fighter. If you see what I mean, why would you fight clean? But yeah, the nature of the feudal world in Dune is a very dangerous one. I mean, it's similar to parts of the ancient world. Your education would have been learn how to, depending on where you're from, but you have to learn how to defend yourself. So I live in a society that doesn't teach you how to defend yourself or anything like that. Teach you everything else and how to pay tax, but they won't teach you how to look after yourself. Gurney is a survivor. The type will do anything to survive. Street smart, non-formal gangster. Yeah. Or most hated character. Ronan's going for the rack here. Oh, interesting. Most hated character. I think there's a character in the Dune series that goes by a name of 3PO or something like that. Do you know who I'm talking about? And it's Frank having a dig, and I don't like to see that character there. I don't know if you're aware of this. I'm not sure if I'm remembering the name right. It's a version of C3PO's name, and there's a character in Dune. Check it out. I'll maybe have to see if I can find this for you. I can't remember what the character is. It's something to do with, but the whole point of that character is it's a dig at George Lucas, nothing else. So that's my most hated character, Ron 99. Don't like things like that. It's childish. Especially when Star Wars 3PO. So there you go. That's my least favorite character in the Dune series is because it has no place being there, if you see what I mean. And I hope that's a good answer, because otherwise I think you'll probably get this from the videos, is that I'm a big fan of Frank Herbert's characterization. I'm being quite serious when I say, certain characters aren't fleshed out enough, because it's one of his big strengths. And it's Duncan Idaho. We don't get a lot on Duncan. In the first book, you'll get a lot more on him in Dune Messiah, but some, they're fleshed out to a degree, but we could have a lot more. And we're not supposed to. I suppose that it's kind of the setup of hero amongst heroes, if you see what I mean. But yes, BBP, it was absolutely a dig. I mean, we've chatted about this, and you'll see this when we get to the hero. I've given my own opinion on the whole Star Wars thing, and what it's to do with the idea of the monomyth and so on. So, and I think Timothy O'Reilly talks about having a word with Frank Herbert about this, telling him, excuse me, basically telling him to wise up a bit. So I just thought it was a kind of a wee. I don't know. I think it's mentioned maybe in Brian Herbert's biography, but it is meant to be a little bit of a dig, as BBP says. And I just think that if I had to pick a character I hate in Dune, I don't really do hatred. It's not my thing. But I just thought it was there for the wrong reasons, For me, Helen, you don't like Gaius Helen Mohiam. Totally selfish, but yes, man. Well, it depends on what you mean. Hated? Why do you hate it? Is it because of the way the character is written and what the character's motivations? See, I'm sort of giving you I don't like that character because it's a shoe and it shouldn't be there. But in terms of, I think Gaius Helena Mohiam is a very interesting character. Her names are, you're talking about gender inversions in Dune. There's a lot of name inversions, gender inversions within the names already. She shares the first name of Julius Caesar. So, yeah, and you get the sense that, I don't know, can I ask anybody else this, but anybody get the sense that Gaius Hel Mohim runs the sisterhood at that point? I think she's the head honcho, to be honest with you. And isn't her death rather ignoble and just kind of almost pointless, I think, especially if you do consider that, as whether Brian Herbert and Kevin J go, that she is the mother of Jessica. Utterly manipulative. Absolutely. Well, that's what the Bene Gesserit do, politics. Again, if motivation of Bene Gesserit motives, Kwisatz Haderach, end goal, create war. To renew the stagnation of the human race, she's Mother Superior, yeah. Oh no, yeah, Reverend Mother Superior. Yeah, I think she's a great character. I think how she's been played on TV. I think she was played very well by Shan Lloyd, and I think that, if that's the right name of the actress, and I think her appearance in Dune and really was very impressive. I liked the way that she played that role. Gets killed off screen by Paul just telling someone to do it. Like, well, yeah, it's just bumped off, really, isn't she? Terraza was a bit of a twit. Remember that name? That's one of the Bene Gesserit, isn't it? Sisters from Chapter House or Heretics. Things ringing bells. I'm looking forward to getting it all fresh in my memory. I think make me be able to answer these questions and answers a lot more easier. After reading Dune freshly, I really like the character Gurney Halleck. Described as a fierce warrior, then breaks out in song and poem with the Balisette. Loved it, lol. Says Bark Lounger. Yeah, he's a very much kind of that Celtic type of warrior poet, if you see what I mean. That kind of, he has that sense of, to me, again, they're all heroes, but that's that. There's always one, within these kind of heroic groups that's been, breaks out the instrument and plays the song. It's a great character, but you loathe her. Yeah, so you hate her for the right reasons, but she's very. I think she's the most impressive thing I think the Reverend, whenever you start reading Dune, it's the Reverend Mother that you really just, a lot of the impact setup comes from her. And I'm going to love her in the new Dune movie, says Karen. She's freaking intimidating. Charlotte Rampling, know her quite well. She's got great eyes. One of those actresses with great eyes. Is it because they're grey? I think. But she's been in quite a few things over the years. Terraza. Well, Gaz was such a striking character when I first read the book. The first pages is this. Sorry, in the first pages is this revered space witch with a dark box of pain. Yeah, I mean, wow, what an introduction. Who else takes the hero of your book and just basically has him absolutely where she wants him, right at the start of the book. All the training and everything that Paul Atreides has is that this woman just basically walks in on the promise of the mother, pretty much and just nearly gets himself killed quite badly. She's incredibly deadly, I think. And yeah, very, very striking character, I think. And the whole got a lot of concepts brought in with her, and that again, motivations. There's the interesting thing, as I said, that there's a lot of fewy things in the appendices that really lend so much to Dune. Halleck would have been a great merry man. Nottingham could have used him. Is that where you're at, around that part of the world, Park Ranger, in the Robin Hood territory? I'm trying to remember who Robin Hood's. It's Will Scarlet, isn't it? In come, let us go torture my friends. Yes, yeah, You kind of have to wonder what's happening. Ethics and morality really are. There is a moral disconnect, I think, for me personally in the Dune universe, but it's a dangerous feudal world, Good introduction to the veiled strength of the sisterhood. Wasn't Charlotte Rampling in Zardoz? God, that's good. Yeah, I think she was, wasn't she? God, we were talking about Zardoz last night, weren't we? I have a funny feeling she was. There's a very weird French science fiction film came out, I think, early 2000s with her in it. It was to do with the Egyptian gods. I can't remember what it's called. Something with the Egyptian gods coming back to Earth, and it wasn't French. Ron's given us about that was her. Yeah, I mean, Charlotte Rambling's I think she's in a lot of British and French films, but she's been well known in Britain for a long time. But if I'm right, she's very one of those actresses with very grey eyes. I think is it piercing grey eyes, and I was actually, whenever I saw that she'd been picked to play the character, I just saw the clip again with the Gom Jabbar at the start there. I was quite pleased to see her in that role. I could think of a couple of actresses, but I thought she was a very good choice for it. There we go. Well, I'll tell you what, folks. We're chatting away here. I suppose we'll go on for a few more minutes, if that's okay for yourselves. We've got a good bit of crack going on. We'll maybe go to 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. here. Sorry. So if you've got any more questions on Leto II or Dune or science fiction, anything at all, fire away, and we'll do our best to answer. We're enjoying the crack here tonight. I remember in Hellraiser, she was a looker in her day. She was pretty in her day. Yeah, she's probably still pretty as well, I suppose, for her age. But she's one of those actors with very, very piercing eyes. I think. Meg Foster? I think you remember Meg Foster had very grey eyes. I think. What was she in? She's in. Meg Foster would have been in They Live and. Blind Fury, and I think she plays Evelyn in the old Masters of the Universe film. Your take on Dune's prescient abilities, says BP. Problematic, I think. We've done a fair wee bit of looking at this in previous episodes and looking at. Karen says, I'll call it out. Thanks for the stream again. No worries, Karen. I'll be wrapping things up, I think, in a few wee minutes myself, but thank you. My take on prescient, have a take it easy, sir. Or, sorry, Keep doing this with these programs. Take it easy, Karen. Have a good one, mate. Look after yourself. My take on Dune's prescient abilities, we've covered a fair wee bit about this, and I suppose on the evolution topic here, BBP. I think they're. I don't know. It's part of it. I think is to do with Frank's warning on the hero. Prescience is it's prediction. It was the old saying, prediction is death. Not sure what you say. I mean, I don't personally believe unless you think time is cyclical or something like that. Then I don't think you can have prescience. Well, not in the sense. I suppose you can be prescient of something before other people, as in you know it before they do. But I'm not too sure. It's a complicated thing, and there's links to the idea of prescience going back to Butler's Erewhon in Dune. And certainly a thing that would cause madness, in the same way that I think the having the other memory has the potential to cause madness. And let me see. Hang on. Just so I'm not too sure. Really, it's one of those things that you can think of. If it depends on how the further down the books you go, you kind of go, well, why didn't Paul see that? Where's Paul's prescience with Leto II? Maybe Paul could have just kind of maybe saved himself a lot of trouble. Went, hang on, I could take a worm skin on right at the start. So there's things that don't make sense with prescience, and there's gaps in it, and so I think it's a flawed concept in Dune, and I think Herbert presents it as another absolute. And if you think about it, it's every time things go badly wrong for people in Dune, it's where they deal with absolutes of, Huey isn't absolutely guaranteed. He can't possibly be the betrayer. He's the one guy it's him. You know what I mean? It's so obvious it's him, I think, even though you're told it's him, but it should be obvious to them. It's the one thing that they don't consider, they don't look at, And even for Leto, there's things that he can't see. He's aware of them by the fact that he can't see into them. So it's very much an element of how I suppose it's used as a philosophical ideal within Dune to look at, particularly evolution, the idea of the golden path and so on. Really, just it does, and again, all the different groups within the Dune universe, they all have different individual paths. Whenever you get the God Emperor, he's at that point controlling their different evolutions, but some things do like this do break down within Dune, So I hope that answers your question. It's just again an opinion. Bark Lounger says They Live. What a great film! Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Love it. Here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Yeah. Use that one myself once. I'm not sure if I can support the claim, David says, but I like to think Herbert had two ideas of prescience in mind, one mystical and part of the religious. I'd say that this mystical and religious are the same thing to a degree. But I see what you mean. Yeah, he does operate with, same as the hero, there's kind of three approaches to the hero. And the prescience is the Janus aspect of other memory. So we have race memory going back, we have a crux point, and then I suppose which is the individual that has this, and then you have the path going forward, which is either a golden path or full prescience, which nobody seems to have, by the way, or limited prescience like the guild have. And at the very beginning, I think you're sort of told that the guild have prescience and they can see a problem coming, but if they attempt to interfere in it, it'll make it much, much worse. So the guild try to kind of not be prescient in terms of the Arrakis affair. They don't they have a sense that no matter what they do, they'll be involved in it, But yeah, it's again always interesting window dressing. Yeah, says David. Seems in Dune that time is linear but loopy. Very good way of putting it, Ron. The understated, just what says David, carrying on with that thread, and the understated is that many of the prescient actions are based on inferences and spies, and then there's the spice. I don't know. Well, the other thing, no matter what you think about it, David, is that the point is we as the reader are meant to be prescient. We have foreknowledge on a lot of this stuff, and ultimately, as we proceed through the Dune universe, we're always being given these historical records and then a little bit of action, historical record, that kind of thing. Our prescience is kind of the foreknowledge. We have foreknowledge in a lot of things, but enough that we still get surprised by the action within the books. But I always imagine that foreknowledge should carry forth into the last book. So prescience, yeah, and then again you have little things like that. We were talking about that Raphael written on the Siege Tabar, and is that retro shooing things in? Possibly, I don't know. But I think very much used as a tool to explore evolution, I think. I got the impression that Chris says that it's written as an evolutionary development that follows the jihad, perhaps in a similar fashion as their mentats. And Barklander says, nice to chat with you. Are you away, Barklander? Greatly appreciate onward numbers. Thank you. Cheers. So the evolutionary development idea is interesting. We'll put it this way, guys. The reason why we're dealing with the evolution here first, and you think, what's Dune famous for? And arguably people will tell you it's the ecology and the hero thing, and that they should be the two. And this is the thing that I kind of was a bit surprising for people with my work, is that I put them in order of prominence. So evolution is the one theme that runs all the way through the 6 books and is strong at the start, strong at the end. It's also what you guys are saying there. Maybe in a kind of way, I wonder, but it allows them to work all the other themes around it. And that's why we start. That's why we're talking about evolution in the Dune series. And we've looked at it in the universe, then we've looked at it machines, a couple of groups of peoples, and now we're looking at it in terms of individuals. It's an ongoing conversation. And evolution has so many different branches in the Dune universe. So yeah, and then of course, then because of evolution, then I want to explore the theme of the dangerous hero. Well, let's see how that, and it allows him to actually evolve that idea. Let's take a look at ecology. And again, we're looking at evolution as a long-term thing. I want to look at ecology as a long-term thing and see how it's tied into it. It allows the chapters that are gone with the sex and gender and war. And again, how do those? So that was the kind of the main bar thread for me, was the evolution. And Rollins just saying there, the entire story is evolutionary. Absolutely, it's kind of the conclusion of my thesis. The whole thing is continuing to evolve, and the big point within Dune is everybody's evolving. And when things, particularly the Bene Gesserit, their problem. What's the problem with the Bene Gesserit? They don't understand how the breeding program and how the Kwisatz Haderach will affect their own evolution. Everyone's problem is they don't quite figure out how it'll affect their own evolution, how things changes, And yeah, it's again in line with his themes, as David says there. Just catching up the entire story, because all of it, and again, because it's all run from that thread from Butler's multiple threads, actually, from Butler's era one. David says there's a heavy focus on the differences in human biology between contemporary humans and Duncan in the God Emperor and Leto himself. Must have a wee nosy at that again. We had a wee look at that speech with with the God Emperor when he's still kind of humanish, chatting to Farad'n and the real who are not human. And my memory wouldn't be that good in that detail, guys. Chris and David. So working my way through like a lot of people, I suppose. I'm looking forward to getting to the God Emperor of Dune. I think you could tear that book apart on all sorts of reasons, if you know what I mean. Tear it apart in a good way, analyze it in different ways. An older model that took the God Emperor. I can't remember about that. That strikes me as funny. Actually, an older model Duncan Idaho. Maybe one of the lines didn't work out or something. Took God Emperor to give the Bene Gesserit breeding plan noble purpose. Beneo. Oh, I don't know what's just happened there. Johnny Shelton says you're awesome, working non-stop. I wanted to pop in and say thanks so much for your content. Keep on keeping on, you champ. Thank you very much. And very kind of you to say so. But there's a yellow thing has popped up with money. I don't know what's going on. I know I don't have that activated on my channel, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. But thanks very much, Johnny. Maybe some of you can answer that for me. There's a lot of Dune in me, if you know what I mean. I learned enough lessons from it in my life. As I said, I used to be an ICT lecturer, computing and information systems, but I had recoiled from a lot of the internet for a long time, you know. So thank you very much, Johnny. Let me click that. I don't know what that does. But working on stuff, I wanted to pop in and say thanks so much for your. That's really kind of you. Thank you very much. Keep on. Very kind, folks. Let's see, just to catch up then. That's Chris. Moneo called Duncan an older model of human. Yeah, got you. Yep. Yeah, but that's the anachronistic nature of the Duncans, I suppose, in some way. Some of us are like that. I'm a very technological minded person, but you might consider me old fashioned. But I've got modern skills coming out the backside, if you know. But part of me lives in a very old world, if you know what I mean. Partly to do with I'm not particularly happy with the world I live. Well, my own culture, I suppose. I think the world's a fascinating place, and I do like meeting people from other cultures, just not my own too. He's been breeding us for a long time, Duncan, strengthening many things in us. He's bred, I suppose again, Maneo's an Atreides, isn't he? Bred from the Atreides. He's bred us for speed, for intelligence, for self-restraint, for sensitivity. You're just an older model. Yes. The Ron said somebody kicked you some dollars. Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't think they could. I was just saying, Ron, I didn't think they could actually do that because I haven't activated anything like that. I think it's called Super Chat. Not sure as to how it works. Babs is saying good night, folks. Sleep sweet. Thank you very much, Babs. Well, listen, guys. You and Quinn's ideas are the bomb. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. It is getting a wee bit late, and I think we're losing a few wee people here. So I think I'll just check here. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 12 more minutes to one if there's a couple more of you want to keep chatting. But good night, Babs. You and Quinn's ideas are the bomb. I like Quinn's channel. I've tried to reach out to Quinn a couple of times, but I imagine he's got like 300,000 subscribers. And I sent him a copy of my PhD. I told you I only sent a copy of it to a couple of people, but it was to people I thought would be interested in it. But one of the reasons that kind of whenever we get there at the end, I suppose you'll see the wee dedication at the end. But one of the reasons for doing these videos was kind of that he kind of inspired me to do them. That I actually genuinely thought nobody was interested in my work, and as this work was done a long time ago. So I started this in 2006 and finished it in 2010. Tried to peddle it around 2011. Not peddle, but just I like the idea of it being made use of, and nobody was interested at all, not one bit, and it just died a death. So I thought this was very timely. It's David saying, interesting stuff, friendly chat. Good night, all. Good night, David. Take it easy. The focus on breeding Duncan and seeming for the genes to remove prescient and visibility and wanting to breed Hawaii and Maneo. Yours is money as an academic tour de force. So Quinn's yeah, very enjoyable. And I don't know, the way I watch TV, I suppose, has changed like everybody else. So I put a couple of pictures of him in the videos to represent the Dune reader, the average Dune reader, because I thought that was, and a lot of people have kind of got into Dune because of him, I think. So yeah, quite like Quinn's ideas. I think he's starting up on Foundation at the minute. And he's good stuff, young Quinn. Do enjoy his channel quite a lot, I have to say. Let's have a wee look. He's a visual thing. He's it's not the same kind of work that I do. Put it that way. as I said, I enjoy his channel. We're different animals, I think, altogether. But like you, but he's got real good enthusiasm, I think, and I suppose he's a bit like myself. If I keep my try to not bring my sort of biases and stuff like that to the thing, I suppose. But no, he's made it quite accessible, and I think he's got some. He could alter the way he does things, and I think he could actually be very professional, if that makes any sense. But that was a nice comment. Thank you. I'm old like you. I'm not old. The man says you're as old as the woman you feel. I'm feeling old. I'll tell you that much. You're most certainly enthusiastic for it. Well, as they say, the knowledge that they used to tell you was if you're going to do a PhD on anything. And by the way, guys, if you're not sure, that's actually what you're watching is a PhD. In every way, you're kind of, I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of participating in history at the minute. Well, it's not history. I've done it. It's the question. Something only becomes history when somebody else inquires into it, I suppose, if you understand the meaning of history. But absolutely. It's my work's quite different. I like enthusiasm for a subject. What they did say, sorry, I lost my train of thought, is that if you shouldn't do a PhD on something that you don't love, or that if you're this kind of PhD, it should be on something that you love, because you need to have that much thought. You need to be invested in it. But they also warn you that by the time you're done, you'll hate the thing. So I think one of the interesting things was I have spoken to. We're talking about Dr. Cara Kennedy, who's got dunescholar.com. Excuse me. And I actually had a wee chat with her not too long back. But I asked her that question. You've done a PhD in it. Do you hate it now? Because oddly enough, I don't. I still like it, and she doesn't hate it either. Still love the material. So that's quite odd. Most people, I think, are sick to death of their PhDs by the time they're done. But no, too much to like, too much to enjoy, and I like to look for the good things in life. I don't know as much as I can be about. I'm not a naysayer, if you know what I mean. I like to see the positive. I'm often very good at picking things apart, but it's for a reason. But no, I did this to critique. It's critiquing in a certain way, but I try to do it with as much respect and without bias, absolutely, as possible. So that was my goal. I enjoy Quinn's videos and appreciate enthusiasm much like our man here. Yeah, it's good enthusiasm. It goes, it sells it. It goes a long way. And I think if you've got the right attitude about something, personally, I'm a person that believes if your goals are modest, you'll achieve them. Just one foot in front of the other, and on you go. That's great to hear. Thanks for the mention of Dune Scholar as well. I was not aware of that. Yes, it's dunescholar.com, I'm pretty sure. And I think Cara Kennedy's Dune Scholar on Twitter as well. So she's been posting some wee bits and pieces. My understanding is she's a book coming out shortly. I think it's to do with the Bene Gesserit. So it's certainly, if you're a Dune reader, one to add to your collection. And I think some of her articles are posted up on dunescholar.com, I'm pretty sure it is. And I think she just had a wee article. Sorry, we's a word we use in Northern Ireland a lot. Just had an article published in, I think, on tor.com, which I think is a science fiction publisher. So her work's getting out there. Her PhD is much more recent than mine. So she's kind of doing the getting your PhD published run there, I suppose. But I think hers was completed in 2018, so mine was done in 2010. But you'll not find too many of them on Dune, So there you go. But yeah, some of her articles really good. I think she's got a couple of things on YouTube as well. I think she's a thing on pronunciation of, because I think it's just etymology, something like that, of Dune, of word names from Dune. So David says, that's great to hear. Thanks for the mention of Dune Scholar as well. I was not aware, no problem. And that's why the academic in this is so appealing. Yeah, and I'm kind of the anti-academic, I suppose. My work's academic, but I'm not one. Not anymore, anyway. Well, I sort of am, but I'm not. Thanks for another informative and entertaining evening. I'm much the wiser for it. You've all given me plenty of fish for thought. No worries, Chris. Experiencing both of you in this video is a real treat. Thank you. I genuinely appreciate comments like this. And I've been doing this since COVID, and it kind of was all my students just disappeared. And just what do I do? And I like keeping busy. And my son suggested, why don't you finally get your PhD? Nobody would publish it. Why don't you do it on YouTube? And it was just a lot of it was to do with my son's idea. Etymology is one of my favorite things, David. I love it. Johnny Shelton says, oh, and God willing, they keep this film franchise running. The evolution of Leto II as a character is, to me, the most unique arc in the history of science fiction. Thanks again, Oscar. You're more than welcome. Yeah, I agree. He has a fascinating character. And he is very, there's as I said, you can find things like that in Greek mythology, different mythologies, and it just depends on the level of written literature ultimately that's survived from those cultures. But you will get stuff on the gods, the Norse gods and so on. But never often gods are just kind of, as I said, superhuman versions of mankind, and they just represent attributes, if you like. But in this case, he is an attempt to what's it like to really be a god. And I'll tell you what, folks, I'll give you one more thing, and then I'll head on for the evening, and we'll say goodnight. But I don't know if any of you know this book, but there's a Strugatsky brothers book called Hard to Be a God. And there's recently a film. The director's, I can't remember his first name, it's German. And Hard to Be a God, the film, if you have not seen it, oh my goodness. And I would highly recommend reading the book first and then watching the film. And my wife, we were both completely blown away by this incredible science fiction film. And it's an incredible book as well. As a theologian, I retired. I love this stuff. As I said, I'm kind of heavily invested in the ancient world, running mystic, mythology and particularly religions are kind of something that I've always been fascinated by. You can probably tell why. But that's a wee recommendation. If you haven't seen this film, and it just blipped on my radar a couple of years ago. Me and my wife watched. It's about 3 hours long, and if you understand the book, Hard to Be a God, the whole kind of Star Trek first prime directive kind of thing comes. They're that idea. It's a brilliant book about a kind of but the film is something else, and it's one of those, we talk about these things. It's where the book is great, but the film heavily based on the book, but it's also a different animal, and it's so good in its own right. I'm absolutely blown away by it. It's a great book, but it's the film. Once you've read that book, check out that, is it Alexei German film? I might be wrong on his first name, but Hard to Be a God film. It's a Russian film, I think. And it's just amazing. Just, and if I would absolutely read the book, because I had to explain a couple of things to my wife starting at the beginning of it, just to explain what was going on. But once she got what was happening, then on we went for the next 2 hours, and it's just mesmerizing. So good. But in particular, if you've read the book, I found it obscenely funny. For all the wrong reasons. So there we go, folks. But listen, we've been chatting here for 2.5 hours. It's been great banter, great crack, as they say in Northern Ireland. But I'll say good night to you all now, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll be here again tomorrow night after the episode at 10 o'clock, and it's, I think, on Miles Teg. And as usual, we'll be here to take your questions, answers, and a bit of banter and comments from all of you. So be delighted if you could join me again tomorrow evening. So in the meantime, folks, good night to all of you, and look after yourselves and take care. All the very best now. Bye-bye.